across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome. It's a Friday morning, 7th of August. So much to get into. As I was saying just before the news, do you trust the Tories on immigration? Now, for many, that question's a little bit bonkers, given their previous. Kemi Badenoch, however, is changing the terms of the conversation. Today, she is pledging to evict foreign nationals from council housing under plans to end Britain's status as a, she calls it, a cash machine for the world. Is this a move in the right direction? Serious question. Have the Conservatives turned a corner on immigration? 0344 499 1000. Also, over in Norfolk last night, and not for the first night, very much related to this, anti-migrant protesters were arrested after an attack on homes they believed were housing asylum seekers. It didn't end well. There were police officers injured and an already concerned neighbourhood feeling more disturbed about what happens next. Elsewhere, e-scooters now have a higher serious injury rate than motorbikes. This doesn't surprise anyone. Have you witnessed that half-wit from hell merrily bombing down the road on one of those things? No helmet, no protection, doing about 40 on the path. Straight out your driveway. Whew, what was that? Oh, it's just Graham on his e-scooter. Man alive. And we talked about this yesterday. The university professor, who had to resign, of course, after various anomalies on his, let's be honest, outright lies, we should say, were exposed on his previously impressive CV. This sparked another discussion here, but we didn't get into it till later in the show, so we want to return to this. Fantasists you have known. That person you once worked with who told you their best friend was Bill Clinton. Or the bloke in the pub who says he held the world record for indoor hand gliding. You know the kind of thing. The man who claims to be the secret love child of the Sultan of Brunei. They live among us. You get the picture. Your stories, please, on that person that couldn't help themselves but tell extraordinary porkies about their life. And they're deadly serious as well. And a bit about biscuit etiquette, but I might save that one for the next half an hour. Charlie Rowley is with us. Partial to a biscuit, I'm sure, Charlie.
Oh, crumbs.
Yeah,
I thought.
We're into it already. We haven't... I was going to save the biscuit one. I feel almost duty-bound to dive straight in with a bourbon.
Oh, do you like a hobnob?
Who doesn't like a hobnob? Yeah, chocolate chip, custard cream. Custard creams I've never quite understood, because you can buy a whole packet for about 3p. Yes. What the hell's going on there? Are they just? They might as well just make them free. It's an extraordinary thing. We will come to that. I don't really know where to start. I do want to just gauge your view on the fantasist thing. Because, I mean, deadly seriously, and it was... We talked about this Cambridge professor a lot throughout the course of the show, but it wasn't really, I'd say, Christian, the last hour, wasn't it? We sort of somehow just morphed it into fantasists you have known, people you work with, who don't just tell a lie, you know, like... I don't know, you know, reinventing the status of their previous role or something, you know, from supervisor to manager or something reasonably innocuous like that. But, I mean, I'm talking about a tissue of whoppers, an entire invention of their life, you know, who they're related to, what they previously done, their qualifications, their their knowledge of the celebrity world, someone they claim is related to them, you know, all this kind of stuff. And once in a while you meet these people, and it's perpetual. Their entire existence is predicated, essentially, on just a pack of fibs. And I don't know whether I think it gets to a point. Some people are of a we're going to speak to a psychologist later on this. Some people are just of a kind of psychological makeup where I don't even think they have to think about it. They don't have to go, all right, what was it I told, what was it I said last week? It's almost just there. It's a continual conversation. And they love it. And you've worked in the world of politics. I mean, there's some right old fibbers in that world.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, this story is extraordinary, just the amount of claims that this professor, now ex-professor, now stepped down, has made, including, I think, running about sort of 600 miles in the space of,
10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You think, oh, gosh. But,
Beep, beep. Was he the Roadrunner? What was going on?
But when you have these big old, fibbers, the trouble with this guy is that people actually believed it because they were blinded by the woke agenda, I think, because they thought, oh my gosh, this is an extraordinary story of someone that is from a black, ethnic minority background. We should be championing.
The male pale and stale tag is about to be eviscerated here at Cambridge because we've got this new kid on the block and he's really cool.
Oh, exactly, and he's about sort of 30 years younger maybe than
the average prof. Yes, all of that. Yeah, he was ticking all the boxes.
And without anybody checking that,
he had his brain removed or something, like 3 weeks before his exams, so and yet still did it and came top, and I mean the list goes on.
Exactly. Nobody checked, whether he'd actually published some of the books that he said that he'd published. Nobody checked that he appeared on I think it was a television show that he said he appeared on, which ended decades before he was even born.
Yeah.
So there were so many things like that you thought maybe you should check, but you're right. He's taken everybody for a fool. What really bugs me when you do have these big old liars, people that say, and you always get someone down the local pub that says, oh, when I was on the books at, Tottenham Hotspur, and you think, well, that's very
that's quite a classic.
Yeah, I was
going to say, that's probably true.
They might sign you up again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
At the state that they're in.
Who's that in the corner? Oh, Harry. He played. Yeah, he's over in Germany now, but he used to play for Spurs.
You always get someone that was.
That's not Harry Kane. Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. Really?
you always get someone, don't you? Who's a pro footballer or some athlete that's oh right. Okay.
Let me just give you some examples, Charlie, of some of the stuff that came through yesterday. These are just great. Diane in Oxford says, I once worked with a bloke in local government whose stories got more unbelievable by the week. Apparently, he was mates with Jerry Springer and used to pop over to Chicago for the weekends. His daughter was a doctor there and his best mate worked in intelligence at the Pentagon. That's always a good one, isn't it? Yeah, my mate works at MI6, right? Bet he doesn't. One day we said, how's your daughter? And he casually replied, oh, she died. It was delivered with such boredom, it felt like he'd grown tired of that particular storyline. Another time he claimed he'd caught hepatitis from a Chinese restaurant but couldn't report it because the triads warned him not to contact the Environmental Health Department. Every workplace has one, says Diane. Here's another one from Simon. My old school pal used to tell us that he was a professional motorbike racer in the late 80s and 90s, although none of us ever saw him race or even ride a bike. These days on Facebook, he still posts photos of himself standing by motorbikes or random pictures of someone riding a bike, but you can't see who it is because of the helmet. He says things like, miss my days racing in British GP. A complete fantasist. We do still laugh at his insistence of this life he had.
Yes.
Why does somebody say that? I mean, a lot of this stuff is quite easy to check out.
It's the lengths that some people go to. But it's not just the lengths, it's the way in which that they must know. Or, in fact, they don't know. But you would have thought that they'd know that the people that they're telling, like, you and I, are doing a big old fib, we can, we know it's not true. Right? We're not that stupid.
But I think...
But they believe their own... I think they believe their own fantasy.
But I wonder if there's a little part of us that kind of sort of... Because people gravitate to these people sometimes, because I think the lies are so big and audacious. You think, could it be true? He told that really well, with real conviction. I mean, who says they go over to stay with Jerry Springer in Chicago at the weekends? Yes, I mean, it's so mad. You think, well, maybe he does. I've never seen him in the high street on a Saturday. Maybe he's over there in the Windy City with Jerry.
Yeah. But you can just imagine him still in the same town, sort of, peeping out his neck curtains, making sure that no one sort of sees him, because he should be in Chicago. And
he should be in Chicago. Jason in Sevenoaks told us this one on a story of the Cambridge professor who embellished the truth. I used to drink in a pub in Ightham, which is a little village just outside Sevenoaks, where I used to talk to an airline pilot for British Airways. He had the epaulets and everything. Or so I thought. Turns out he was a gardener who worked half a mile down the road. There was actually a theme in Coronation Street. Do you remember that?
I do, actually.
Deirdre's boyfriend.
Yes, yes.
She thought. Do you remember that, Christian? She thought he was an airline pilot. He used to come into the Rovers with the same kind of thing, with his sort of, it's a big flight from Barbados, or just flown in from Munich or whatever. And I think it was David Platt that followed him, and the character played by Michelle Keegan. I think he worked in Tyrac at Manchester Airport.
He did, yes. I remember that. For some reason, I remember that.
I thought I was inventing that phrase. I thought I was lying.
My mum's a huge fan of Corrie, so I would have watched countless episodes.
I can't remember his name, but it was a big theme for a while.
But the actor was Nigel Havers, wasn't it?
No, he was another. He was another
fantasist.
another fantasist. He was the one that it was Audrey, wasn't it? It was Audrey Deirdre's mum, I think. It was Audrey Roberts that he kind of conned.
Oh right.
Havers was great.
Right. Audrey was the mum of Gail Platt. That's it. The Platts.
Yeah.
Yes, and he worked in Tyrac at Manchester Airport, or at an airport.
Yeah.
You're right, the idea that he would have kissed goodbye and said, it's going to be a long flight, and goes out with his sort of, suitcase and uniform on, and it's all.
I watched that also with my mum. Obviously, we're different ages, Charlie, but I remember my mum. This is funny how your brain works when you work in this industry. My mum's going, "Oh my God, look, he works at the airport," and I'm going, did Tyrac pay for that sponsorship?
Yeah,
because it was all over. They didn't hide it. It was Tyrac. Yeah. What happened to Tyrac, by the way?
Well, after that episode,
they finished them off. Went the same way as the sock shop, didn't it? Goodness me, I used to love those places. One in from Lee in Market Harbour says, I once worked with a girl who, if you'd been to Tenerife, she'd been to 11erife. I love that. She once claimed to have 2 white label first pressings of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. But when I asked her if I could see such sacred items, she couldn't find them. Now, that's interesting. That's a bit of a classic, because we once worked with a guy who said he had... Who was the guy from the Sex Pistols? Was it Steve Jones? Was Steve Jones one of the Pistols? Have I got that right? I think so. And he claimed to have a guitar. Well, he essentially claimed to have a whole guitar collection, including the original guitar from the greatest moments of the Pistols were played on. And he didn't. And he claimed to be a guitarist as well, and couldn't play. Never ever. There was no evidence this guy could play the guitar. He was enamoured by the guitar. He wanted to think he could have played the guitar. He probably had a rock star thing as a kid, and it never went away. But he just sort of morphed it over the years to that kind of level.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are, there's another character that springs to mind from, I think is it the show of Benidorm, which I think is played by Shane Ritchie, where there's a guy...
Shane Ritchie in Benidorm? Did he do a bit?
He did, yes, in the later series. And he's sort of a character who once sort of, was an entertainer, maybe trained as an entertainer, maybe did a few gigs, but then obviously it doesn't work out. But then you maintain this lifestyle of that you were on tour with, goodness knows who, the Rolling Stones. You played this gig, that gig, that
all of
venue,
that.
When actually you're sort of still, you're just holed up in a caravan park, and you sort of...
And for 50 quid a night, you sing on a stage to 200 people.
Exactly. Or you're just sort of, you like the karaoke scene, and you go around the local pub, but you tell people I've got a gig tonight, and it's, but it's 2 for 1 down the Dog and Duck, or whatever it is.
And then because I worked in Spain when I was about 18 in Torremolinos, which is a very similar vibe, frankly. And it was sort of... The pubs were full of those. There'd always be a British singer who'd sort of sit on a stall in a corner of a pub, and they would sell their CDs afterwards as well, They had their own little fan bases too.
Yeah.
It was usually a woman called, he's lovely, that man, isn't he? All right, come here, you big love muffin. Sing us some Neil Diamond, will you? They absolutely loved all of that.
Oh, you remember me, do you?
Somewhere. Love on the Rocks. Could never forget it, Charlie.
That's my disguise. That's the voice I put on when I'm on holiday, you know, just to throw people off.
They would never know. Was that Charlie? No, definitely not. Definitely not. On a serious point, I know I'm going to say this every day, but what is joyful about working here is these gear changes that we can do, because we're talking about this old tosh. But it is quite fun. And yes, people have... Oh, Paul in Oxford says, what about Rachel Reeves, who thought she was an economist?
Well, I was going to say, mention her because...
I think I have to say, for Ofcom-based clarity, I think she is an economist, but just wasn't working where she said she worked.
Yes.
Is that right?
Well, she claimed, if I remember right, she claimed she was an economist at the Bank of England, I think, for about 10 years.
And she was a cashier at the Bank of Scotland.
Yes, she sort of worked in, you know, customer accounts or customer
It was something of that nature. And also the word economist is a... it's a kind of broad... Every now and again I meet a teacher who's a maths teacher who describes themselves as a mathematician. Now, that is technically true, but not really in the common way we think of a mathematician.
Yes.
You know, René Descartes, for example. It's sort of what springs to mind when you think of mathematicians.
Their day-to-day is not spent on sort of, you know, doing coding.
Yeah, an
or
economist is a kind of... If you've done, you know, if your degree is in economics, does that make you an economist? If you're literally employed, if the Bank of England put a job ad saying economist wanted and you apply and you've got the... Fine, you're an economist, clearly. But it's quite a wide description, I think, an economist.
Yes, yes. Is it the qualification you have or the job that you do, I suppose?
Well, quite,
you know?
yes.
Because, you know,
I mean, you don't describe the English lit teacher as an author, do you?
No, no, or a writer.
Or a writer, yeah. All right, split hairs, it's the same thing. All right. All right.
Well, you know, as a you know, published author of, you know, dozens of books, and, you know, and sort of...
Yes, those ones that you used to... Yes, the ones you wrote under the pen name of Linda LaPlante, yeah. I always thought were quite good, Charlie. You did rather well out of those, didn't you?
Thank you.
We're going to have some more of this. We are going to talk about the Tories and immigration as well. Just because I think this is a good one to get into, because, of course, the Conservatives are... I mean, they, you know, full house points for trying. They are clearly trying to get back the ground that once upon a time was absolutely theirs. But in the last decade, things like immigration... I mean, the trust in the Tories on immigration is zero at the moment. And Kemi Badenoch is saying, look, yep, we mucked up. We're a different group of people. We weren't specifically responsible for these policies. You know, Boris Johnson's Boris wave of immigrants and the boats that began to come over post-2016. This was not under our watch. Kemi Badenoch, I'm not sure when did she become an MP?
Good question, but I think she was certainly around during.
It was in. I'm going to go 2015.
Yes, that would have made 2015, 2017 would have been
one of those two.
Yes, yeah.
2017. So Kemi Badenoch has not been an MP for 10 years. So she wasn't around during Brexit, for example. So she could have claims in truth that, you know, this was not my idea of a Conservative Party. Now I'm running it, I can put it back to what I think it should be. The Tories today, and I think it's the front page of the Mail this morning, they're splashing with that. Foreign nationals face social housing ban under the Tories. It's a bold move. They say the Tories have vowed to scrap tenancies for non-EU nationals already living in social housing and to block all foreign citizens from taking out new tenancies. Is that as a Conservative, Charlie? I think you're just about still that. I don't know. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're.
Well, I think
maybe you've gone over to Polanski's.
Yeah.
As if.
You know me. You know me.
Indeed.
Well, I try and keep an independent mind because, you know, I think just in doing this role, it's important to take a step back.
Well, don't be too independent round here, will you?
But it is absolutely true that I used to be a Conservative special advisor.
Yes.
That's not embedded.
Yeah.
No, that's not sort of...
We once asked Charlie for a list of things he advised on. We're still waiting for that list,
I had the title special advisor, but I never felt particularly special or gave any real advice of any worth. So it's an interesting one. So I follow them very closely, and I've got lots of friends.
And you're
who
still
work
connected
there.
in many
Yes,
respects.
yeah.
Firstly, can they change it, or can they own this conversation? Because, of course, the people that really own this conversation are Reform UK, and reasonably so, because they've owned it forever. That's been essentially when the starting pistol was fired, that's what they came out of the traps with.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that the Tories have got going for them, I think, is the ability to take time and to pause and then announce things that are properly packaged and, having the experience of being in government. OK, they will absolutely admit when they got things wrong, but it's that experience of being in government, knowing how the civil service works, knowing still who is around to be able to formulate policy properly, even if they got the decisions wrong and took their eye off the ball and things, immigration sort of went up. But I think when they do announce something, it does seem to be pretty well thought through, as opposed to maybe some of the headline-grabbing approach of reform at times. So it's an interesting...
Because they've got to, for them to be convincing at any election, they've got to be on this one issue, because often you get these polls that poll people on who do you trust on specific issues. And with the Tories, it was always the economy. Crime was absolutely 100% crime was the Tories. I don't think anybody would say that now. And immigration would have been, before it became such a kind of central subject to everything we discuss. I think instinctively people would say, well, that would be the Conservatives as opposed to Labour or the Lib Dems, for example. And I don't... Can they get that? But will there ever be a survey where the Tories outdo Reform on who do you trust on sorting out immigration? Because that's the place Kemi Badenoch's got to get to. Yes, absolutely. And I think, look, we're heading into, well, after summer, it's the conference season, and I know Kemi had a very good speech last year, some good announcements there. And that sort of kick-started her leadership, I think, really. And people thought, wow, actually, Kemi's, she's saying all the right things and telling the hard truths that the country needs to be told, talking about, not living in as she said previously, we don't live in a multicultural society, we live in a multi-ethnic society, and not all cultures are the same. And so I think if she builds on that this season, if there are some big policy announcements around crime, then things will only get better, hopefully. We will talk more about that. Do you now trust the Conservatives on immigration? 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note there as well. We're also going to play you in a moment a little clip from a BBC documentary of Professor Jason Arday. This is the fella that's just walked the plank. Being greeted by his new boss at Cambridge. I mean, you have to see it or hear it to believe it. OK, we'll bring you that in a moment. First, though, let's get a voice note on the Conservatives. This comes from Perry. Morning, Perry.
Morning, Ian. No, sorry, still don't believe in Conservatives, because I'll tell you, if they were to win the next general election, this is how it would go. They'd say, are we leaving the Human Rights Convention? They go, well, it's something we are looking into, but at the moment, the main priority is to get the economy back on track. That'd be one thing they'd say. Then they'd say, what about net zero? Yeah, well, that's something that we're looking into, but unfortunately, our hands are tied by the legacy left by the Labour Party. And that's all it'd be. They'd blame it on the legacy of the Labour Party, they'd blame it on the economy, that's what they need to sort out first. I just don't believe them. They just make excuses and won't follow through on anything they're promised. Because it's what they do. It's a boy that cried wolf.
we've been on the beaches for 2 days running. Both days we've been hassled by the local French police. They've turned up armed to the teeth, looking very aggressive. We've had to arm ourselves, actually, with gas masks. They're checking our ID, wanting to know what we're doing here. They should show as much enthusiasm, I think, with the migrants. They seem to be waving them through and hassling us. But this morning, they asked for my ID. I told them to clear off. I said, you got it yesterday. You're not hassling me on the beach on my morning stroll.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
27 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning. Welcome to a Friday. It is Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for today and next week. So much to get into. Let's get a voice note. Another one on the professor from Cambridge. This comes from George. Morning to you, George.
Morning. Hope you're having a great show. Jules from Leicester. So maybe Jason could actually convince himself that he was a nutty professor. Yeah, couldn't resist that one. Bye for now.
That's a very good point. Officially. You know the Nazi professor? That was me. Was it? Yeah, fact, really. Fact.
Yes, yeah, I like that one.
This one came in from... I like this, because this is kind of the other way round. This is from Ian, who says, I told a work colleague that every December I receive a royalty cheque for being a member of the choir that appears on the Tina Turner song Beyond the Thunderdome. I told him our school choir won a competition and we got to record it with her. I've kept it going for about a year now, and when it comes on the radio, I always go ka-ching. I love that.
Why that song and why that?
Well, it's so random, isn't it? I mean, that's the beauty of it. Because you think, well, why would he? But yeah, that's it's got a choir in it as well.
Oh, yes.
That's the "we don't need another hero" thing, isn't it? So yeah, there's a choir singing it. I mean, but of course, if you think about it, the choir wouldn't have probably didn't get paid at all for it, and if they did, it would have been a one-off. The idea that every member of the choir gets a royalty cheque every time it's played.
Ka-ching.
Ka-ching. I love that.
Very good.
One here, we mentioned Coronation Street, didn't we? And there was Jules says there was another fantasist in Coronation, a few years earlier in Coronation Street, when a character told everyone he was a marine biologist. In fact, he worked in the gift shop at the local aquarium. I do remember that loosely. I'm trying to think who it was. But I think it was a similar thing where somebody went into the gift shop and, you know, they found him in there and he had to hide, and that, you know, Rita went in to buy a goldfish or something for Mavis.
For the salon or something.
For the salon, yeah, exactly.
For the salon.
What a funny salon that is, isn't it? Have you ever been on the Corrie tour?
Do you know, I've not been on the tour, but I did go to this set, but I think it's the old set in Manchester.
It is the old set.
Because
yes.
we did some, funny, I think I was, when I was back in the Tory party, scouting for venues to do sort of interviews, and it was part of the Tory party conference, and we Manchester, the studios there very kindly sort of said, well, come and have a look around, and if you want to do it was sort of and they were celebrating something, actually. I think, wasn't there... Now, it's not 250 years, that's a bit excessive.
That's a long time. But it has been going over 60 years, I think.
But it might have been their 50th.
Could well have been. Yeah,
like
we went on the tour, and by this stage it was the old set, but exactly identical to the new one. So everything's still there, you know, Dev's shop and the kebab place and all that. I think didn't Dev own the kebab place as well as the shop? Bit of an entrepreneur, wasn't he, Dev?
Yes. Potentially.
Yes, I was in a Ted Baker shop in Covent Garden a couple of years back, and I was talking to the guy behind the counter, and he started a conversation about how we're all nice people in here, you know. We're all nice people on this side of the counter. I said, well, we're all nice people as well on this side of the counter, aren't we? And I turned to the guy next to me, and it was Dev from Corrie, and he put his hand out and went, thank you, nice to meet you. And he was obviously, if you're in Coronation Street, you're recognised all the time. So it was obviously his kind of instinctive manoeuvre. Hi, nice to meet you. Big smile on his face. Yes. Lovely man was old Dev.
That's
the fantasist marine biologist in Coronation Street was Jude Appleton, played by Paddy Wallace. There you go. He claimed to work as a marine biologist in South Africa, but it was exposed in 2018 that he actually worked in a gift shop at a sea life centre. Lied to impress his family. Talking about, like, we've got to play this because there's many questions. So the professor, Jason Ardé, who, I mean, I was saying yesterday, I wasn't the only person to say it. A few people picked me up on it. I said that these sort of, let's be polite, these exaggerations on his CVs. Yes, he did run some marathons and he did raise money for charity, but he didn't do it single-handedly. He was part of a group of over 100 people that raised $5.5 million. But putting it as if you were the only person that raised $5.5 million, I can't remember what the charity was for, something, you know, it's a good charity and stuff. And I was making the point he didn't really need to do this because he's obviously a clever bloke anyway. And then many people said, well, was he? Because what was it that he, you know, if you've got plagiarism going on in your thesis or whatever it was, then maybe you're not as clever as you thought. I mean, maybe you are. I don't know. I mean, but I get the impression that he's not, you know, he's not just some bloke like the Coronation Street stories that walked in off the street and went, oh, hi, I'm a professor of sociology. Can I have a job, please? It was a bit more than that. Either way, so there was a BBC documentary. I mean, talk about lauding this guy and celebrating the fact that he turned up as this sort of the youngest black professor they'd ever had. He was, you know, as you said at the beginning, Charlie, sort of 30 years younger than any other professor. So that alone, the fact that he was young, he was, you know, a lively character, he was very likeable, very sort of friendly, outgoing, a bit quirky, but not, I wouldn't say eccentric, but his life experience sort of, you know, was so, the breadth of what he'd done was so wide that he became this very interesting character. Nothing to do with his skin colour or anything. He was just a bloke that they were so seduced by him. And if you want evidence of this, so this is him meeting his boss, essentially, at Cambridge, OK? Now, have you ever worked for a boss that spoke to you with such heady levels of reverence as this?
And now Jason is days away from achieving another ambition.
Hey, so good to see you.
Here's his new boss at Cambridge.
We do have a lot of work to do, but I feel really optimistic.
There will be those that think this is a tokenistic appointment. What are your thoughts on this?
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you. You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
Wow. I've never had a boss. I mean, I'll come out of here and my boss, Denny, will go, yeah, it was all right today, wasn't it? I might get that.
Funny if I got that praise.
I might bump into the big boss in the lift every now and again. I bump into her. She always goes, morning, Ian. Yeah. I say, morning. That's where it stops. And I'm fine with that. The fact she even speaks to me. I love it. And these are all wonderful people that I work with, but I wouldn't expect that from a boss. The reason we've got you is because you're the best in the world.
Yes.
You're so excited.
I know, and but I mean,
drooling.
But him even asking that question, sort of just for the, you know, it's almost gaslighting. It's almost sort of, you know, putting that person, in this case, his boss, on the back foot to say, oh, what would you say about people that make this a tokenistic appointment? You know, it's a bit like me saying, you know...
You're sitting in front of her, what's she going to say?
Yes. Well, a few people might thought that. You know,
she's going to say, well, to be honest, Jace, there was a bit of that.
You know. Exactly, you know, we've got a diversity quota to...
Exactly.
You know. Of course she's not going to say that, you know, so to be boxed in your boss to say, or having to say...
Yeah.
You know, everybody thought you were outstanding, everybody thought you were excellent, and we are, as you say, so lucky to have you, and holding on to his hands as if, you know, the Messiah has arrived into the building to save Cambridge University's sort of sociology and education department. You know, it's extraordinary.
Den says in Suffolk, morning Ian, when I was in the army, I worked with a bloke from Cardiff who claimed he worked for the Triads before he joined up. Also, another lad who claimed he was titled an African prince back home, and another whose dad was a guitarist in a famous rock band. It turned out it was all true, so I try not to judge.
Well...
Because that also happens once in a while. You do meet someone with the most... And you go home and say, this bloke I work with, you won't believe what's happened, you know.
Well, and look, someone somewhere's got to do these jobs, haven't they? You know, and people have, you know, you do hear about people, even celebrities that might have worked in Coronation Street. You know, they have worked there for a bit, but then they've either taken a step back or they've left the show, and then they end up sort of just working, normal jobs like, everybody else. But the army one, funny enough, I think you do get quite a lot of fantasists about the army, because there was that chap, wasn't it, at the Remembrance Parade?
Yes, who had the whole uniform.
And even put down, as part of the local council took him
had
as
all
part
the
of
badges and everything. The uniform turned out he worked in Halfords, didn't he? Or something? No, I think he had been in the army, but never to that level.
Right.
I don't think he'd done anything like. Oh, he said he served in the Falklands and
was
commanded, a battalion. It was all of that kind of stuff, wasn't it? Stephen in Edinburgh says, here, one of my best mates used to chat so much nonsense that everything that used to come out of his mouth was dribble. He actually says, if you believe your own lie, it's not a lie. See, I think that takes it to another level as well. Thank you, Stephen, for that. But some of those people, because I've noticed when I've met these characters, they're not struggling to tell the lie. They're not. It's not as if they have to sort of go, oh God, what did I say? I can't remember now. Did I say I was the son of, or the cousin of, or did I say I used to work for the Royal Navy, or was it the? They don't. It's very fluent. It's automatic. They're on a kind of autopilot with this stuff, and you've got a choice to tell the lie or not tell the lie, and their psychology says tell the lie. But it does it so instinctively that it sounds a little bit convincing. And then some of the people that I've met who've gone down this path, the lies are so big that you are forced, even when you've decided, this guy's full of BS, he said, there's no way that's true. But then the next time you're talking to him, you go, well, maybe some of it's true, because who would tell you that?
Yes.
Who would say they were the backing singer on Bohemian Rhapsody or something? Who would say that unless they were?
Yes.
Because you could probably check it out.
I was just about to say, you could probably go and find that sort of stuff out. But there are also people that isn't there a school of thought, I can't remember what the word is, but if you sort of imagine something, so if you want something in that, you have to sort of manifest it. That's the word, And so people manifest these ideas and these fantasies about what they want to do, but then tell people that's what they do, or that's all they know that person. And there is one friend who I sort of know, and I would call him a friend, I suppose. If I don't see him, he doesn't live in London anymore, but he used to come out with some of the most extraordinary stories, and about sort of 40% of them used to be true, because he would say, oh, I'm having dinner with this person, or I'm meeting that person, or I know this person. And then, of course, there'd be a photo with him, or, because he'd been able to infiltrate whether it's backstage or because he's working as a sort of a tech person.
Exactly.
But then ends up befriending maybe the star or whoever it is, and then they form a relationship. But then the other half of the story was sort of, oh, yes, I know someone he basically got too much money, doesn't want to pay it, so they're basically buying me a property to live in. And then you think, oh, well, that's very nice. Whereas it sort of used to be in Mayfair, or would have been in Mayfair, now they're living in Blackpool. It's sort of, it doesn't all add up, but some of it
Some of it sort of adds up. The best one we had yesterday, you'd have loved this, Sam, was a guy who said he worked with somebody who said he used to be in REM. And he once showed them a photograph saying, look, that's me in the corner. And I don't know.
That took me a beat there.
I don't know whether that's a kind of a gag that's retold, or whether he just wrote it for us yesterday. I don't care either way. It was brilliant. Stuart in Brighton says, in Coronation Street, the fake pilot's fictional name was John Lindsay. Yes, it was. In a bizarre twist of fate, the chief pilot's name in the airline I used to work for was actually called John Lindsay. Whilst the Coronation Street storyline was running, one of his passengers actually wrote a letter of complaint to the company stating how idiotic it was, hiring an obvious fraud, and they only had to watch Coronation Street for proof. There is a thing, actually, I remember this from years ago, when something happened in somebody's husband died in Coronation Street, one of the characters, and the actress was on a chat show and said that somebody sent her 2 tickets for a holiday in order to get over the death of her husband. And I think there are people that watch it oddly. I don't know how do you think Coronation is a documentary?
Yes. Well, the one that I do remember is Deirdre again, when she was on trial. I think. Wasn't she on trial for something?
She was in jail.
She was in jail. But there was a whole... I mean, I think it was a Sun. The Sun newspaper ran a campaign to sort of...
Free Deirdre. That's right, they did.
And people were writing to the Prime Minister.
Yes, I mean, the Sun did it as a kind of fun, sort of great tabloid thing to do. It was brilliant. But then people picked up on it because of Deirdre.
Yes, yeah.
The four-eyed crim.
Yes, yeah.
Languishing on Sea Wing. Rightly so, after what you did, Barlow. Whatever your name was.
You do hear the stories of the actors and actresses that play these characters. So if you're an actor that's, you've cheated on the wife with 3 kids and you've abandoned them, and then, of course, they're just going about their normal day, but they'll be scowled at by members of the public that obviously watch it, thinking that they're still the character and sort of,
Well, years ago, I've lost touch with this guy. I used to, in our kind of drinking group, as it were, there was an actor called Deepak Verma, and Deepak was the first... I think I'm right in saying he was the first Indian or certainly first South Asian actor in a soap in EastEnders, and he played Sanjay in EastEnders. And he did it for, I don't know how many, a few years. And so we would go out drinking, walk through Soho or whatever, and so bear in mind he hadn't done this role for 25 years. He couldn't walk more than 20 yards without someone going, Sanjay! Sanjay! He had it wherever he went. I can't remember his wife's name, but people used to shout that out as well. Where's whatever her name was? It is amazing. It is extraordinary. And I remember also once, and this is, I'm not name dropping here or anything, this is just things that happened. Walking up, I think it was Dean Street, and we'd gone out for the night, and an actor called Perry Fenwick, who played, I can't remember, in EastEnders, is he still in it? He played Billy in EastEnders, and his girlfriend at the time was in Coronation Street. So there were 2 of them. And she used to think it was quite funny to shout out, especially after a drink, look, everybody, it's Billy from EastEnders. It took the heat off her, and everyone would go, oh, my God, it's Billy from EastEnders. It was... And he said... I remember he said to me, the first time I met Perry, was he just recorded his first week of being in EastEnders. So it hadn't been out on the on telly. And Adam Woodyatt, who plays Ian Beale, took him to one side and said, enjoy this couple of weeks, he said, because after next Tuesday, when your first episode goes out, he said, everything's going to change. He said, you absolutely need a baseball cap, if nothing else. He said, because you cannot go anywhere. So you end up in that curious position that even though you're in a domestic soap, you're kind of more... If you see Robert De Niro in Tottenham Court Road, you assume it's not Robert De Niro. It's just somebody who looks like him. But if you see a soap actor, they're arguably more recognisable than, some of the big kind of Hollywood A-listers.
Yeah, because I guess...
Even if you don't watch them, you kind of know who they are, sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. I think as you assume, it just becomes more familiar if they're on your TV screen sort of more often. And I know you're absolutely right. And I suppose, I mean, I can't remember, when soaps are filmed, they're quite early in the morning, aren't they? You've got to get in pretty early, and your days sort of...
The days are longer. They film about... like I think in Coronation Street, they could be filming 3 episodes in the street. One at that end, one in the middle, one at the other end, and different scenes. And we had... God, when I was on TalkSport, we had Ken Barlow in as a guest once. It was the weirdest interview ever, because I've never met someone who's so recognisable as the man that's been in it from day one. It was kind of like you sort of think, it's like somebody wearing a mask of Ken Barlow, because he sounds the same and looks the same.
Yes.
And it was just brilliant, and he was just so lovely, and his hearing wasn't so good. He said, "Don't worry about that. I mean, hearing's a bit iffy." He said, "But I get through it, so you won't. There'll be no stumbles on this." And he was just so nice and lovely. And he said, of all the things, he said it is. He said, "I'm not complaining." He said, "I've had a job for life." He said, "But the days are long, and there's a lot of sitting around." But, as he said, you're not digging holes for a living, are you? So no one's going to shed a tear for the £500,000 a year actor from Coronation Street, really.
No.
Plus as many supermarkets and nightclubs as you want to open and appearing for the extra dosh. It's a nice old life. One here from Paul, very briefly, says, Ian and Charlie, back in the 80s, I was seeing a Dutch girl, and every time I travelled there to see her, I noticed all her friends were incredibly friendly and uncomfortably over nice to me. It was obviously okay at first, but then it got annoying. After about 2 years, she finally admitted that she told everyone that I was Marty Pello's brother from Wet, 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 who were very big at the time. See, that's another one. You can sort of once removed claims to fame, which sound a bit more believable. Oh, you know, see him over there, you know.
Yes. Someone's got to, because someone's got to do it. Someone's got to be
back
the brother
in the day
role.
on the old Talk Radio, Joan Collins' daughter worked at Talk Radio, called Tara Newley. Yeah, and she's, I think, you know, independently done her own thing. But that was always a bit, because people go, that's Joan Collins' daughter, and then like half the people go, no, it's not.
Yes, yes, and sons of, you know, footballers. I mean, I mean, I get mistaken for footballers all the time. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo is the top one.
Oh, the Meds team. Sorry, yes, okay. Just asking.
I know the beard's
the beard is the giveaway. Charlie Rowley is with us. Still more to come. We will get onto some of the serious stuff on the issue of fantasists. Here's a voice note from Jimmy. Morning, Jimmy.
Ian and Charlie, good morning. Great show. It's Jimmy from Halifax. Talking about fantasists. I used to work with this guy. His father must have been Lazarus, because I think in the entire 5 years I worked with him, he went to his funeral 3 times. Great show.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Home of Common Sense, 10 to 7, right here on Talk. It's Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for the next couple of weeks. Oh, today's the last day of the first week. Goodness, where did that go, for God's sake? It's Charlie Rowley's 3rd time in here. When they say to me, would you like to do breakfast for a couple of weeks? There's one red line. Don't book Charlie Rowley. It's pretty simple. You know, it's not a big request. I can say this. I know you a bit, Charlie, so I can say this to you. I'm just being honest. Don't book Charlie. What does Charlie bring to the party? Absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm the only Charlie at any party that goes down quite well, I think.
Well, the parties I've been to. There are people doing all sorts in those. Anyway, it's the 3rd time this week you've been with us, which we're always great, because we have a bit of a giggle in the mornings, and we do, despite this veneer of schoolboy stupidity that we sometimes get into. It's great to see the amount of comments we get, and great compliments for Charlie as well, particularly on these kind of issues, the sort of light-hearted stuff. We have got the serious stuff as well, and this straddles two. It is serious, but there's also something comedic about e-scooters. Because e-scooters now have a higher serious injury rate than motorbikes. I have no trouble understanding that at all. Because you see people going, they're meant to do like 1 mile an hour, aren't they? These things overtake me when I'm driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that? E-scooter.
Yeah, and I imagine there's lots of people driving them or riding them on the pavements as well. I think
I'm right in saying they're still illegal unless they're hired. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Because there was the guy that used to cut my hair. He said to me, I got told off this morning for taking my e-scooter on on a train, because some train companies ban them now, because I think there's a concern about the electrics, and I think one caught fire on a train or something. And I said to him, you know they're illegal. He went, no, they're not. I went, no. He said, I got it in Halfords or something. I said, no, they are literally illegal to ride on roads, unless it's a hired one. And I don't know if there's any of those. Are there any e-bike hire schemes in... I don't think there are. There's lots of bike hire schemes in Manchester and Edinburgh and London and places, but... yes, they are still illegal to ride on public roads. You see loads of them. I don't know how often they get pulled over, but you're not meant to ride one. It's meant for private land. How many people have got enough private land to ride an e-bike around it?
Well, yes, yeah. And is this the e-scooter and the... Because I've got visions of the e-scooter being still that thing that you sort of, you know...
Yes, that thing, the e-scooter.
Your 2 feet on the, you know...
You put 2 feet on it, you press a little button and off you go.
And it just goes.
And when they first came out, I remember we got one from Argos before there was any of this sort of stuff about, you know, the dangers, or I don't know about regulation on roads. And it wasn't that expensive. And I tried it out. I once went to Tesco on it. It couldn't get me back up the hill. It was so rubbish. It just didn't have the power in it. It was just an initial model. But it went literally at about 5 miles an hour, if that. It just went... And then... Didn't really use it. I don't know why I got it. It was like a little gadget gizmo. Oh, one of those looks a bit tasty. And then when you look at the small print on the website, it says this is not to be ridden on public roads. But now, these things do a rapid rate of knots. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people out there, car drivers, who've had altercations with e-scooters. And we want to hear from you this morning. 0344 499 1000. It's a bit like having an altercation with a bicycle. You don't... They've got no insurance. You've got no... And they will probably leg it afterwards, even if they're ordinarily nice people and decent folk. They don't want to hang around and say, oh, yes, I'm going to pay for the repair of your wing because I smashed into it. That doesn't really happen. There's nothing. There's no way. And they are dangerous. They're really dangerous. And you see them in big cities. You know, I've seen them in London weaving in and out between buses and taxis, thinking, man, no crash helmet or anything. Man, what's that guy doing?
Yeah, and my real big bugbear is at crossings, even at your traffic lights, it might be red, but you see cyclists just sort of, you know, speed on through the red lights, so they're not adhering to the highway code like everybody else. People who are just generally trying to cross the road, and cyclists don't adhere to... I mean, I don't mind cyclists, obviously. I think, you know, it's not a bad thing to do. It's quite a healthy, probably, way of getting around. But I just... It's something maybe for the more rural and town community rather than cities.
The e-bike as well, that's a whole other thing. Some of those are much faster. I mean, there's a guy down my road almost every day. I'm walking the dog early. He goes down the road and he is properly doing 35, I would say. Easy. Again, no helmet. Russ in Bedfordshire says, Sanjay's wife was Geeta, that was it, Geeta in EastEnders. He found her in my flat when she left him. They used it as the location. There you go.
Now, is that true?
Is that true? That's a good point. Couldn't they just, I mean, they used to film it at Elstree, couldn't they just make a bedroom to pretend? No, but they would have needed an outside, because he would have gone looking for her, I'd imagine, and they needed to see a flat, and it wasn't in the same part of, what's it called, Walford? Is it Walford?
Walford area, yes.
Walford,
yeah, Walford. EastEnders, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. One here says, this is from Brian, he says, I also worked with a bloke, sat next to him at a sales conference when the Salesman of the Year awards were being presented. This bloke tells me that he won Sniper of the Year when he was... Do they really do that? Sniper of the Year... Brigadier Smithers popped out of a bush, no one saw him coming. He served in the Falklands. When I double-checked, turns out he would have been 13 when the Falklands happened. What a prat. Yeah, there's a lot of that as well, isn't there? Paul in Manchester, I was in a pub talking to somebody who told me that he fought as Port Stanley in the Falklands in 1982. I found out from somebody else he was only 40. And that's right, that's often the date that gets somebody, isn't it?
But you would have thought that would have just been something so basic that if you're going to tell a porky, you know, at least make it stack up.
Get the years correct.
Get the years right, yes.
Yeah. Fafa says, when you get into the biscuit discussion, my favourite plain chocolate digestive, and my favourite is plain chocolate digestive. I'm kind of almost bang on with that one as well, the chocolate digestive, the plain one rather than the milk one.
You can't go wrong.
You really can't.
You can't go wrong.
And why are Jaffa cakes in the biscuit aisle? Says, oh, that's going to prompt that discussion, isn't it? Is it a cake? Is it a biscuit? Wasn't there a VAT issue about that? Wasn't there? Literally a serious. It went to court because because one's exempt from VAT and one isn't. So the company said we're a cake or we're a biscuit or whatever. A Jaffa cake is not a cake, is it?
It sounds like Lorraine Kelly, sort of, she's not really called Lorraine Kelly, or, she is, but that's right. Her show, the Lorraine Kelly show, is different to the Lorraine Kelly in real life. That's why she didn't have to pay tax.
Yes, that's right. That was she was a character.
She's a character, yes.
Playing a character. You see, I don't want to get into favourite biscuits because this was about biscuit etiquette and it was about, the things people do, like putting an empty packet of biscuits back in the cupboard when you think, oh, look, there's a packet of custard creams. I'll just... Because it's a funny packet, isn't those things? You open them and they're a bit weird. And... It's like why nobody's invented a packet of salad leaves that doesn't rip into 20 shreds when you try to open it. What's that all about?
Yes.
So it's these faux pas that people... 34% of Brits are angered by bad biscuit etiquette. From dunking to how you store them, crumbs in the bed.
Oh, yeah, now that's a difficult one. I'm a big fan of biscuits. I can get through a packet of biscuits, but the only thing I'll say about biscuits very quickly is that I think if you go round somebody's house, which, if ever I'm invited, which is not very often, but you can always tell how much they appreciate you, I think, by the biscuit they might present you. So,
you think so?
So if it is a 43p custard cream, then you know.
That's why Charlie is regularly offered a bonio from his friends. Charlie,
chance would be fine.
We've hit the clock. Great to see you. It's like having one of the Dimblebys in the studio. All the big stories we've covered here in this last hour. More to come. This is Talk.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
Our fifth Prime Minister in 4 years. Blimey. And, well, look.
That's the walk a fine line. I think that's probably what's going on because if he were to sweep into Downing Street and say, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to do things completely differently to Starmer, then people would say, hold on, mate, we need a general election in that case, because no one voted for that. No one voted for you to be Prime Minister. You weren't standing in the 2024 general election. We've never seen your manifesto. Who the hell are you? That's what people would be asking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. Coming up on 4 minutes after 7 o'clock, Collins in for Kyle here on Talk Breakfast. It's Friday, the 7th of August. Here's a question. Do you trust the Tories on immigration? For many, that is a mad question, given their previous. But Kemi Badenoch is trying to change the conversation. Today, she's pledged to evict foreign nationals from council housing under plans to end what she calls the UK being a cash machine for the world. Is this a move in the right direction? Have the Conservatives turned a corner on immigration? Do you now trust the Tories on immigration? Your thoughts on that, and we'll talk to Helen Whatley, Shadow Secretary of State Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, in just a moment. Also, very much related, anti-migrant protesters were arrested after a mob attacked homes they believed were housing asylum seekers. Never a good look, by the way, wherever you are in this argument. It didn't end well. Police officers injured, and an already concerned neighbourhood feeling even more disturbed about what happens next. Also, as we've been discussing, e-scooters now have a higher serious injury rate than motorbikes. This doesn't actually surprise anyone. If you've witnessed that half-wit from hell merrily bombing down the road on one of these things, no helmet, no protection whatsoever, and doing what looks like about 40 miles an hour. And we talked about this yesterday, and it's fired up the phone, despite all the serious stuff that is out there. This is, of course, has a serious underpinning. The university professor who had to resign after various anomalies and, let's be honest, outright lies were exposed on his previously impressive CV. It sparked another discussion about fantasists you have known or worked with, the person that claimed they were best friends with Bill Clinton, or the bloke in the pub who claims he has the world record for climbing Everest as a teenager, or that one that claims they're the secret love child of the Sultan of Brunei. You get the picture. Your stories, please, on that person who couldn't help but tell extraordinary porkies about their life. And biscuit etiquette. We still haven't fully got into that. We'll see how it goes. Details to come. Everything you need to know. Naturally, we bring you all the breaking news, and there's always some here on Talk Breakfast. The number you need to drop us a voice note or get in touch on the phones is 0344 499 1000. And, of course, you can message 87222. So let's go back to it. There it is, front page of the Mail this morning. Foreign nationals face social housing ban under the Tories. Let's get a word with Helen Whatley, Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Helen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us. Why would I trust the Tories on immigration?
Well, let me just set out the policy that we're announcing today and talking about today, which is about making access to social housing for British citizens. We know that people feel that they're being taken for a ride at the moment, and that too much of taxpayers' money is being spent on foreign nationals. That applies to welfare, but also for social housing. We've got over 1 million households on the waiting list for social housing, and we've got 250,000 of social houses being let out to foreign nationals. So we're saying we would put a stop to that, end access to social housing for foreign nationals, freeing up those houses for British citizens to move into who are currently on waiting lists, and in the process saving up to £4 billion for the British taxpayer.
I can almost hear a cohort of lawyers, whatever the collective noun is for a group of lawyers. I'm sure we can be quite imaginative with that, already lining up to say, this can't happen, it won't happen, it's illegal.
Well, we will bring forward legislation to change the law so that this is a policy for access to social housing. To the extent that you're suggesting that you might get that kind of legal activism which we've seen in the past, which you saw, for instance, when we were in government, we've said, and Kemi Badenoch's been very clear, that we're going to leave the European Convention for Human Rights to put an end to that legal activism and stop the legal system, judges getting in the way of what British people people want to see.
Does that come, would this come under the sort of ECHR umbrella yet again?
Well, yes. I mean, I think that's what you're referring to. If you're saying that this sort of policy would be opposed in the courts, that would usually be the route that you would see taken. And we're saying we'll put an end to that because we've been very clear that a future Conservative government would leave the ECHR.
How do on a wider point, Helen, how do the Tories turn this whole conversation around? We've talked a lot about Kemi Badenoch, trying, and with some level of success, to sort of own conversations that have previously been exclusively the domain of, for example, Reform UK. I mean, this is like turning an oil tanker around for the Conservatives, isn't it? To try and get back to a place where the British public can look at your party and say, this is the party of immigration. That would have been undisputed a decade ago. This is the party that mean business. This is the party that will get stuff done. This is the party that's on the side of alarm clock Britain, hard-working Brits. At the moment, nobody seriously believes that to be the case. You and your colleagues must be aware of that.
Well, I disagree with what you've just said there, and I hear it, and I hear it from people I speak to all the time, clearly out about it in my constituency. You are very impressed by Kemi Badenoch as a leader of our party and see that she's clearly different from some of the leaders we've had before. What's interesting is that what we're also seeing is, to the extent that people are choosing between, say, Reform and Conservatives, actually Reform are copying us on quite a few policies. They're doing it differently, and I think they're often getting it wrong. But we first announced this policy last autumn as part of our announcement of £23 billion worth of savings from the welfare bill, and we said that we'd stop benefits for foreign nationals, which we said will save us £7 billion, and we also announced this policy at the time. Today we're putting out more detail about the policy, including, for instance, the number of homes that we envisaged would be freed up for British citizens to move into. On many occasions we've seen Reform copying our policies, as I said, often getting them wrong and doing it in a different way from us. For me, this is a thoughtful policy about making sure that British housing is available for British citizens and recognising the fact that the British taxpayer does feel that they're being taken for a ride and we can't continue to be a cash machine for the world.
And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Notionally, that is, I think, would have the support of most people. But have you ever, seriously, as a minister, as a shadow minister, as a constituency MP, when you're pounding the beat down there in Faversham at the weekends and wherever, have you ever met anyone that seriously thinks that the Conservatives own the conversation over Reform on immigration?
Look, there are some people who take a view on immigration that they want to see, people tipped out of the boats in the middle of the sea and forced at gunpoint to go away. That's not a position that the Conservatives are taking. Though I've heard people want that from other parties. The Conservatives are taking a robust position on immigration and, in my area, on welfare. And one of the things I know from indeed conversations that I've had both with charities and with migrants trying to come to the UK is they think that they're going to come to the UK and then be given a home. That is one of the things that's wrong about our current system, that we're seen around the world as somebody who's probably overly welcoming, shall we say, to migrants, and we've got to put a stop to that. We've got to be quite clear that our welfare system and our social housing system are first and foremost for British people. It's a safety net for British people who need that help.
I notice on this, that the announcement of this foreign nationals facing a social housing ban story, that it doesn't include EU citizens. So the Boris wave can continue apace under the Conservatives.
Well, we're not proposing to unpick what was in the EU withdrawal agreement, and under that it does mean that citizens of EU settled status do have access to social housing. However, what we are saying is looking forwards to the future. We're in the future not going to continue to allow that to be the case with new social housing tenancies. New social housing tenancies will only go to British citizens.
This, of course, prompts lots of other debates and tangents around immigration. And we know there were some grim scenes in Thetford in Norfolk over the course of the last couple of nights. I think it was the third night there'd been trouble. 2 men arrested on Thursday, according to Norfolk Police, taking the number arrested to 5 so far. I think a police officer was injured as well, quite badly in all of this. And it all came around because crowds attempted to storm homes that have been linked, rightly or not, to asylum seekers. Now, This is a tricky picture. Nobody wants to see anyone using violent methods to show their disquiet on immigration. But this is what your party will be up against. This is what you've got to deal with.
So violence is not the right answer. None of us, I don't like to see that. We don't want to see that. What we do need to do is get a grip on our borders and get a grip on immigration and get a grip on foreign nationals accessing the welfare system. Those are the things that we need to put right so that then British people can see that they have a government who's got this under control. They want a government that's got the borders under control. They want a government that's got immigration under control. And they want a government that is making sure that British people are put first. We need to stop having a welfare system which helps attract people to the UK. We've got to make the UK not such an attractive place for migrants to come here and try and come here illegally. We've got to make it very clear, if you come here illegally, you will be sent straight away again and you will not be given access to our welfare system or indeed to a roof over your head.
Give us a view, if you would, Helen, while you are with us, this curious story of the Cambridge professor who's now had to walk the plank of shame, it seems, after some sort of colourful additions, I think this puts it rather politely, on his CV. He was lauded as the greatest thing that's ever happened, not just to Cambridge, but to Oxbridge as a collective, if you like. I know you went to the other one, but it's nonetheless, Cambridge was the place he found himself. And he's now gone. We're not hearing much from the government itself on this, and I think the story has reached a new sort of point of significance that's beyond just a throwaway story about an iffy appointment, if that is how some people view it. It's a bit bigger than that.
Well, it is an extraordinary story, and how he got sort of so far and for so long with with this fraudulent background, and I think, you know, it is a pretty bad sign that it took so long to pick up on him. And I want to get back to a time when, you know, we can be proud of our universities and proud of the standard of education that they provide, and proud of the standard of research, and proud of people who work in them. This is not a good look for the British university system.
Yeah, I mean, the accusation is that, you know, Cambridge, like Oxford and other universities, to be fair, had been accused forever of being male, pale and stale. And, you know, the average corduroy-clad professor, you'd have seen them, those characters that can wear one of those jackets, have a big old messy beard and convince you, even on a bad day, that Stalin was a nice bloke. Those kind of people that exist in academia. But I mean, it seems that Cambridge were just so seduced by the idea that here's somebody who, regardless of his skin colour, was about 30-odd years younger than the next professor in the queue. He was different, he was young, he was a young black guy, he'd been through all sorts of issues around his health. He was a charity superhuman. A lot of this, and he could write a thesis like no other, published books, turned out he hadn't. Is that what's going on here, do you sense? That this was just the institutions or the establishment thinking, we've got to do the right thing, this will be amazing for us if we do this, without looking any deeper into the story?
Well, as a point of principle, we want to see people get jobs, whether it's, you know, across the economy or in universities, based on merit. Obviously, you need to make sure that what people claim is actually the truth, but appointments should be done on merit first and foremost.
Hannah Motley, thank you for your time. Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Thank you to her. 0344 499 1000. Can I also ask if you're in that neck of the woods where these, I mean, I wouldn't call them riots, but there were certainly protests in Thetford last night. I hear it's the third night on the trot that we've had this. A couple of people arrested on suspicion of racial hatred relating to offences on Wednesday, the force said. The other man arrested on suspicion of being drunk and disorderly and failing to give his details when asked by the police. So it's in protest terms, it's relatively low-key. It would have been naturally quite scary. Now, it doesn't matter how ferociously you are against immigration, the use of HMOs, people just being plonked into your neighbourhood, the stories of one elderly woman who lives on her own in this area, and suddenly, you know, half a dozen guys are just plonked into a house next door or something. Or don't quote me directly on that, but it was in that ballpark, OK? I'm not inventing anything there. These were the concerns that led to people protesting. Now, whether there were migrants in these homes or not, it ain't a good look to frighten the bejesus out of people, regardless of what you think on the wider scale of immigration. And I would also argue that it's also not a great look as well for the elderly lady who, if she wasn't scared before, was probably bloody terrified after a couple of dozen characters show up and the police and sirens and all sorts of things going on outside of her house. If you are in Thetford and you know this area well, your thoughts on 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. This is Talk.
A week now spent learning the detailed ropes and the administration and all the problems that will face him a month or 6 weeks later on when events in the Commons, events elsewhere start hitting him. So I think he will come to regret it. I understand it's not just been in a job for a fortnight. He's fought an exhausting by-election. He was Mayor of Greater Manchester. So I understand why he's gone, but I just think practically he is making a mistake.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jim makes it. Good morning, by the way. 21 minutes after 7 o'clock. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle for today and next week. Jim in Exeter, completely reasonable this. He says, morning Ian, it really gets my goat listening to any Tory crowing on and pretending to be right-wing and oh so robust. They're only saying these things now to gain popularity. They had 14 years to speak out. Chameleons, says Jim. That's fair. Sue in North Yorkshire, morning. What an absolute nerve from the Conservatives saying Reform are copying their policies. It's the Conservatives copying Reform policies. It's still blatant. We see the Tory party for who they are, a dying, spent political party falling in the polls. We will not forget their 14 years in government, and we will not fall for their lies. I agree with Sue. The only thing I disagree with Sue on is we do keep saying 14 years. And they were in for 14 years, but 5 of those were, obviously they were in bed with the... It's not quite a defence of the Tories, but for 5 years they couldn't really do very much at all because they were in a coalition, of course. And then Brexit happened, then COVID happened. It never felt like... They never felt like they'd settled as a government. And then we had so many leaders from Cameron to Theresa May to Boris Johnson to Rishi Sunak to Liz Truss. Who was the last one? Oh, that was Rishi, wasn't it? He was the last fella. I'd forgotten all about lovely Rishi. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us with comments on that. Let's get to work with Henry Bolton, International Border Force Control expert. Morning to you, Henry.
Good morning. Good morning.
Always good to have you with us. So here we are with a story that the Conservatives are owning. They're saying this is theirs and it's not. It doesn't overarchingly change the whole immigration story, but it's in the ballpark. The headlines say it all. Foreign nationals face social housing ban under the Tories. Who'd have thought it, Henry? We've struggled for years to solve the migration and immigration crisis, and overnight, Kemi Badenoch's gone and done it. What do you say?
Well, there is a bit of plagiarism going on. A number of parties are moving down this route. I'm now with Restore Britain, and the policy of Restore Britain for a little while now, a couple of months, has been that foreign nationals in social housing would be deported, so de facto would lose their access to social housing. We've got Reform saying the same thing. We've got Kemi Badenoch saying similar. So really, what I would say is this, that politics, thank God the country is now waking up to the fact that we have been the land of milk and honey for illegal and legal migration for years, for decades now, and we've been exploited. And I can't blame the migrants who do this. I mean, some come here with an absolute passion to integrate into the United Kingdom, accept British laws, accept British social norms, fully integrate. They want to be part of the Great Britain, of, if you like, popular culture, sort of in that sense, historic popular culture. They want to invest in it in themselves. But there's, I would say, the majority who are milking us. Last night, I flew into the country, and at the airport that I was boarding the plane, and two ladies in front of me, they've got British passports. They're right in front of me. I can see the passports, no ambiguity about what passports they were. And the airline staff said sort of British, because they weren't speaking English. I don't know what they were speaking. And one of them answered, no, we're Eritrean. Now that therein sums up the problem. A British passport is seen as a useful thing to have. British citizenship is a useful thing to have. And it's the same in other countries. I've worked, as you know, Ian, around the world. And a lot of those countries, particularly sort of in the near sort of proximity to the European Union, people want to be part of the European Union so they can get free travel to the European Union. Yeah. Which I understand. It's practical, but it's an exploitative thing, and we've been naive enough to allow it. So now, are you still there?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. I've got a sign saying something went wrong here. Can't see you, but no mind. So what I'm saying is that we have allowed a situation in the United Kingdom where we have been exploited. Social housing is part of that. Free healthcare is part of that. Free education is part of that. For the illegals, the hotels, the money that they get, the clothing allowance that they get, all of the rest of it. This makes the United Kingdom an attractive place. And to you and me, perhaps getting £8 a day. I mean, I'm not by any means wealthy, but £8 a day free when isn't that much. But if you're from Somalia or Sudan, that's actually a small fortune. And then you've got the opportunity to work on the black market or black economy. You can make money and send it home. So now my point is that finally it seems that all of the political parties on the right are starting to at least sound as though they're serious about dealing with these things. We'll see if the practical implementation comes. But as long as the United Kingdom is attractive in this way, then people will still want to come here.
It's interesting. We had this message, Henry, from Robert, who says, Patrick in Kent, who says, what rubbish on this council house story from the Tories. Most of these homes are privately owned and rented out and paid for from benefits. There are not many council-owned properties. Even then, HMG, His Majesty's government, has no power over council decisions. And that's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, you're more likely to be in a private home if you're one of these people.
Well, that's why, that's why we've got the policy of removing benefits from foreign nationals. They shouldn't be receiving them. British citizens, yes, but foreign nationals, no. Some come to the United Kingdom purely to gain the benefits, and then sort of skim off that and then send it home because the benefit system is pretty generous. So that's absolutely correct, what that person is saying, because if you don't plug all of the holes, all of the incentives, then they will find wriggle room around it. And of course that's going to happen. We see it on the borders with the boats. You know, because the government doesn't have a strategic approach to it, they'll put a fence around Calais. Even when they were talking about putting a fence around Calais, I said, all that's going to do is shove the problem from the ferries and the trucks down the coast onto boats.
Yeah.
Well, it was predictable. So it's the same thing. So when you when you design these policies, you need to make sure they're fully comprehensive, and that's been a failure of successive governments.
Naturally, as a Restore voice, I don't suppose you're about to blow much smoke up the trouser leg of the Conservatives on any of this stuff, Henry. But as many people point out, whether you say they had 14 years, whether you say they had 5 years, the fact of the matter is they were in charge during the bulk of the crossings that we've had over the Channel. They were in charge when EU citizens were being left in the so-called Boris wave, were being led into the country in such extraordinary numbers. I don't know how the Tories can really turn that one around. They can, you know, Kevin Badenoch can say, well, I wasn't even an MP in 2016, so don't blame me. And yes, I was in the government, but I never agreed with this part of policy. She can claim that, but for them to turn this around and own the immigration conversation, I think for many people is almost, I mean, at best it's nearly impossible. At worst, it's utterly laughable.
I think, you know, under the Conservatives, it started with David Cameron and, as you say, the coalition. I mean, David Cameron never listened. David Cameron and George Osborne together have basically, they've totally wrecked the way that we designed the defence budgets. That's one of the reasons we've got the problems we've got with the defence and procurement. I know that's not what we're talking about now, but no, so it starts with Cameron and Osborne and goes back there, and then May, and you're quite right. But no, I mean, they cannot shift the burden, if you like, of blame, justifiably a burden of blame, for 14 years of negligence, incompetence, complacency, and all the rest of it, which have led us to this problem. You're quite right. However, I would say that, you know, you can look at I know it's a long time ago, but the Liberal government under Gladstone was bloody tough. Okay, we fought more wars to try and deal with various things, you know, basically to enforce liberal values. We fought more wars under the Liberals back in the 1880s than at any other time, really. They were tough. They were forward-leaning into problems. Look at them now. So what I'm saying is that political parties can change. Of course they can. But it takes a long time for people to forgive and forget. And the Conservatives absolutely have that problem. And what they're doing, I'm not sure that they're 100% sincere about this. What they're doing is that they have to address this as Reform and Restore Britain are moving, you know, more solidly onto that ground. Then the Conservatives have to, in a sense, keep pace, because otherwise they're just going to get forgotten. Reform and Restore Britain are just going to storm ahead, because this is the number one issue facing the British people.
Indeed. Henry, thank you. Great to have you on as ever. Henry Bolton, International Border Control expert. I just objectively, and applying just the basic tenets of intelligence, I cannot see how the Tories can own this conversation. It would be... in many respects, you know, the Lib Dems could probably have as much chance of owning the conversation as the Tories could. The evidence, whether they like it or not, and whether there's some, you know, there's more to it. You know, it's never just a headline. There's always detail. Even if you gave them some benefits of the doubt on some things, and, you know, there's people who argue the Boris wave was done as a reaction to, you know, needing X amount of people in, you know, to work in care homes and stuff. And even if you applied some of that, the evidence speaks for itself. The Channel migrant crossings have been going on for the best part of a decade. The Labour government have been in power for 2 years. The previous Tories were in power for the other 8. Now, how can you, with a straight face, if you're a Tory politician, say, yep, we're going to get strict on this, Where were you for 8 years? Where were you when Sajid Javid went down to Dover? I think he cut short his holiday to go down there and make that big announcement about the crisis in the Channel. And he was going to send the drones in and the cutters, and there's going to be all sorts of intelligence, and this is unacceptable. And this was when about, half a dozen people had come over on a rubber dinghy. And here we are today with 1,000 people a day on certain points over the last few weeks. 1,000 people a day coming in, and still no one solved it. Most of that happened under the Conservatives. I don't know how they can turn that around. Trying to intellectualise this conversation, take it away from your own party politics. If you were advising the Tories, how can they seriously own this conversation? Stuart is down in London. Stuart, what have you got for us? Morning to you.
Good morning, Ian.
Hi.
Well, Kemi knows full well, as well as everybody else, that she will not be able to deport anybody, not be able to throw people out their houses, because she might leave the ECHR, we'll still be in Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, which is enshrined by law. And the lawyers will use this every single time. Now, Farage has guaranteed to leave that and to leave the ECHR and possibly suspend for a while the 1951 EU Convention on Refugees. Otherwise, it's not going to work. She knows it. We all know. She's just saying what Starmer said before, just telling everyone what they want to hear, but not explaining to us there's not a chance while we're in Tony Blair's Human Rights Act that this will...
I don't know if it's... In fairness, it's not Tony Blair's Human Rights Act. He made it easier to implement the core. Well, the law was already there, but he enshrined the ability to domestically apply it rather than having to traipse over to Europe to do it.
Yeah.
But either way, you're absolutely right. These acts will be used. And, of course, you only need somebody who's told they're going to be deported next Tuesday to go to one of these lawyers. They won't have to pay for it and say, I don't want to go next Tuesday. And once you put a claim in, then everything goes on hold, right? And they could be on hold for years.
Absolutely true. Nothing will change. The Tories, be honest, we don't want to stop mass immigration. They let it go on for they have 14 years to stop.
Why do you think they want it? Why do you think they've been...
I mean, cheap labour for some of their people, but
is it that cheap, the labour? I mean, is it just
half of them don't work?
Well, I mean, the jobs that if you get a job in, I don't know, working behind a bar or in hospitality or something like that, even if if you come over as a well-intentioned migrant, you're going to get paid the same as a British person, or is it just British people don't want to do those jobs?
Well, certain people don't. I don't know, but a lot of people. I used to do bar work when I was young. Lots of people did bar work. It's a great way of meeting people.
Yeah.
We had a great time. All the Saturday jobs are gone. Everything, where young people could get their first job. They used to do paper rounds. Everything's gone now.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
It's a good point. Stuart, thank you, mate, for that. Have a great day. 25 to 8. This from Andrew, who says no social housing for foreign nationals under the Tories. Will they still pay housing benefit? If they will, then it's window dressing. Well, the brutal reality is that, as far as I can work out from this Badenoch announcement, it won't affect people who are already in those places. So this will be from day one that the Tories are in power. Their words. They will put a block on this, but it won't affect EU citizens. It will be outside the EU and only people coming in from that point onwards, because you'd never be able to get that in. So look, you wouldn't be able to kick people out of their houses. Back on that issue of fantasists, this is on the back of the Cambridge professor. We're not leaving this one alone. There's too much to it. But fantasists you have met in your time and worked alongside, that bloke in the pub that can't help telling a whopper. You know, the kind of people that tell not just a bit of a lie. They don't just slightly embellish what their job title was in their previous workplace. They go hell for leather on a tissue of whoppers so big that you start to think, well, it must be true. I mean, who claims that they're the cousin of the Sultan of Brunei if you're not? That kind of stuff. Alison says, when we were teens, I found out my sister was telling people she'd been to dinner with the actor Clive Owen and was secretly dating him. That's exactly that. Back to, we also did a mash-up here with Coronation Street. I won't go over the details of how we got there, but Lee says, Ian and Charlie, it was Charlie Rowley was with us earlier. Do you remember when David Platt was on the Jeremy Kyle show for a family dispute or something like that? It was a Coronation Street special. I don't remember that. And if I ask Jezza, I bet he doesn't remember it either. I do remember when the now King was on Coronation Street. He was Prince Charles then, and he did a... I don't know if they went to him or he went to the street or whatever, but it was one of those kind of... He shook hands with Audrey, who'd been given an MBE or something in the programme. Merv says, I think you're correct about Jaffa cakes. This is a VAT issue one way or the other, but it's also one of the arguments that was standard biscuit. One of the arguments was a standard biscuit is fresh when it's hard, and when stale, they go soft. The Jaffa cake is soft when fresh and goes hard when stale. Is that how you define it? I mean, a Jaffa cake... If you're tuning in to this, you're probably thinking, is it 1987 when on the radio they're discussing is a Jaffa cake a biscuit or a... No, we're not. It's on the back... Thank you, Merv, by the way. I think you're right. It was on the back of a separate story, a survey of annoyances that Brits have about something called biscuit etiquette, and it's spawned across all sorts of areas of your humble biscuit. Maybe we'll get more on that a little later. More to come, 0344 499 1000. On the Tories, let's get a voice note. This comes from Liam. Morning, Liam.
Morning, Ian. Liam in Yorkshire. These Conservative MPs that come on here sound as deluded as the Labour MPs that you were doing morning rounds. They seem to forget about what went wrong for so many years. And now, because Kemi Badenoch, yeah, don't get me wrong, she's a good leader, but the Conservative Party as a whole is the problem. Like the Labour Party as a whole is the problem. It doesn't matter who they have at the helm, who's the captain. The ship's still going in the wrong direction, mate. There needs a complete change. And I honestly believe, and a lot of the public believe, unfortunately the uni parties don't, that change is going to come by reform. Yeah, so have a good show, mate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, welcome back. It is Talk Breakfast right here at the home of Common Sense. So much to get through, some great calls on the way from you as well. Stand by for more of that. And including the Conservative announcement, front page of one of the newspapers this morning, foreign nationals face social housing ban under the Tories. On this and other related matters, let's get to work with Giles Dilnott, editor at Conservative Home. Morning to you, Giles.
Good morning. You've thrown the gauntlet down on me, haven't you?
Really have, yes. This is down to you now to fight the corner. We spoke to Helen Whatley a second ago. I do genuinely have a sympathy with Conservatives trying to kind of rebrand or reclaim territory when, of course, there is naturally, and we would be remiss not to mention it, there's a body of work behind them that says otherwise to some of these things that Kemi Badenoch is talking about. How did the Tories deal with that?
Well, I'm going to stand up and say I'm going to take some of the blame, because I was there in the Home Office not very long, 6 months, but this landed on my doorstep and I had to try and deal with it. The first thing is we did actually stop lots of boats. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it's true. We stopped loads of them, and with the French. The problem is that you can stop 60%, 40% come across. That's still way too many, and you haven't stopped the boats. I don't believe for an instant there is a desire to not do something about it, to quietly just let it happen. But we failed. We failed to stop the boats, and we promised that we would. It didn't start in 14 years. I remember reporting on channel crossings in 2001. It was one of the first reports I ever did as a journalist. And Henry was absolutely right that as soon as you protected the ferries and the lorries, then the problem was going to move to the side. The problem with all of this is a bit goal line defence. The way you really stop this is having deterrence. I believed, and I had a flight booked on the 26th of June, 2024, to go to Rwanda. It would have had people on board. And there was another one booked for a week after, and a week after that, Rishi Sunak called an election. I don't know what to tell you on that one. But nonetheless, you need a deterrent. It is a sum of parts to tackle this. There is no silver bullet. This is goal line defence in the Channel. What you really need to do is stop the problem before they even get into France. Sure. France doesn't want them any more than we do. And they are quite clearly, evidentially, don't overburden themselves with stopping all of it, because they don't want them in Calais either. You need to stop them getting to France. They won't come to France if they don't think it's worth coming. I thought processing them and saying, look, you can be processed, you can become a Rwandan citizen if you want. The deal's pretty good, actually, but you don't get to stay in the UK, was the right deterrent, rather than just saying, we'll send them to Rwanda. We would have sent them to anywhere that was willing to do third-party processing, and there would have been others that joined had we made that successful. Labour scrapped it on day one, didn't even inform the Rwandan government. This is simply part of welfare reform. It makes financial sense, but the other thing is, I think there are a lot of people listening to your programme who will understand that if you've come here and you're not sustaining yourself, you can't just live off the state and have a right to housing.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? When you put it like that, Giles, it's so bizarre we're even discussing this. Wouldn't that not just be a standard thing? You know, I can't imagine there's many countries around the world I could just pop up in and say, you know, here I am, I want to live here. Could I have a house?
It also plays to the fact that, I'm sorry, there is a naivety about this. The whole point about an asylum seeker is that they are seeking asylum. If, as lots of people sometimes suggest, that all these are the most vulnerable people in the world and we need to look after them, actually, you don't know that. That's why you're assessing whether or not they benefit from having asylum.
Yeah,
they might have just come for a better life, which is, you know, I understand why they might do it. I understand why we might want to stop that. Why did the Tories? I don't know. First of all, to your point, you know, can they even? I mean, you don't just walk off the field because you're saying, you know, I don't know how you can turn it around. They can't avoid this. They have to tackle it. I know that Kemi takes it seriously. The party takes it seriously. You are absolutely right. Your listeners are right. They're going to have to work very, very hard to get anyone to believe that they actually want and will do it. I've met her. I know her quite well. You know, if she decides she wants to do something, she's going to do it. And that will be her aim. Can she persuade the public that the party understands, as I do, that we failed on this issue? Yeah, I mean, she's going to try. That's for certain. Your listeners are simply demonstrating that that's a lot of hard work to do.
It's a you know, turning an oil tanker around territory, isn't it? I mean, to try and get to that point where you are seen as, I mean, at the moment, there's no doubt about it, unequivocally, Reform UK are seen as the party who are strict on immigration. It's almost, they were born almost out of that singular issue. It's the one they've owned. It's the one they talk about. They make announcement after announcement. to try and nick that territory. I mean, you can, you know, when it was just the good old days of the Tories versus Labour, fiscal policy is an obvious example. You know, you'd nab a bit of that idea and they'd nick a bit off you, and it sort of homogenised, and you'd have this, you know, more or less pretty similar idea that, you know, the reality of economics worked within certain parameters, and they were the kind of rules and regs and the T's and C's around carving out policy. With this, it's a whole different area, isn't it?
No,
because
it's
firmly reform, and the Tories have got to say, no, this is firmly conservative.
I don't necessarily define it quite like that, but you've also got to do the point of, you can say what you like about immigration, you can own that policy area if you wish, but part of the Tories' job is to point out that this Operation Fortress thing, believe me, I fought this fight on the ground, so I really do know what I'm talking about. It's fantasy. So Operation Fortress thing is fantasy. They won't be able to do that. They certainly won't solve it in weeks. You don't solve. There is no silver bullet to this.
Is that because no one's done it, though, Giles? I mean, they're saying, look, everybody says you can't do it. We can do it, they say.
No, because here's the thing. It's not like this is a new idea. It's called kinetic activity and using kinetic activity, i.e. doing something to push the boat back, all right? I've literally investigated this because, you know, if it works, do it. The fact is that there are obstacles, not excuses, obstacles, serious obstacles to making that happen. And they have quite serious ramifications and consequences. So it's not that. I mean, one can project, and I'm sure reform will, that we just didn't have enough will. We didn't have enough power. You didn't want it badly enough. You didn't want to do it. That's fair enough. You can say that, but I can guarantee that this has been gone into in a lot of detail because you wanted to explore every opportunity you could to try and. But as I say, mainly this is goal line defence. If you really want to stop this, you want to stop people crossing over to France in the first place to try and come here. And part of this is also the draw. Not just so we haven't got the deterrent. There is no effective deterrent at the moment. It was scrapped. And this is about the draw factor. And I think anything you can do to remove the draw factor is also part of the solution. Whether people believe the Conservatives mean it or not, that is a task for the Conservative Party. And I do not underestimate how hard that's going to be. But don't expect them to stop trying and making the case, because they believe it. They believe they will do it. And they believe that they are going to be, and making the case that they are different and have learnt from the mistakes they made that saw them kicked out of office ignominiously.
Giles, on that profound point, thank you as ever. Giles Dilnot is the editor at Conservative Home. Journalist, previously worked for the previous administration as well. All-round good bloke. Yeah, that's what they're going to do. They're going to turn it around, own all these conversations, and they will be the next government. Yeah. We're talking about a lot of things here. Immigration, as ever, is central. There were protests in Thetford last night. I think it was the third night of protests. A female police officer seriously injured, seriously bitten during that. Who bites somebody? What kind of people are they? Who bites people other than babies or dogs? Luis Suarez, yeah, there is the exception to the rule. Norman Brennan is with us. Former police officer of many, many years. Norman, good afternoon to you. Always nice to have you with us. I know you're a robust, tell it like it is, former cop. You're still involved in law and order, the coalface of many of these troubles. Look, if you've got a problem because you think the wrong people are living in your neighbourhood, having a scrap and biting a copper is not really the way to show it.
Well, it isn't, and there's no deterrent. I mean, people assault police officers every day now, expect to get away with it. I see regularly police officers being GBH'd, and when I was in the job, our magistrates and judges said this is not a behaviour that we're going to accept, and they supported us, they backed us, they locked them up, and for GBH you were sent to prison for probably between 1 and 4 years. Nowadays, you're given a slap across the wrist, you're back out on the streets, the police are still at the casualty department being treated, and often if they're bit or spat up, they have to have HIV and other hepatitis B checks.
Yep.
Sometimes they can wait 6 months to find out if they're in the all clear. And the tow rag that assaulted them, nothing's ever happened to them. their home, cracking on, doing what they're doing, and probably will do it again because they think they can get away with it. And sadly, our courts allow them to think that way and to get away with it.
Yeah, it is a nightmare scenario, isn't it, for a police force to realise there's a protest on their own patch. The one thing the government hate more than being £3 trillion in debt is disquiet and public disorder, riots and the like. So when this stuff happens, it puts the police in a very, it puts them in a proper policing capacity, I suppose, but, you know, quite difficult when you've got a baton and some spray on your on your waist and nothing more. And if you're up against a mob, that becomes a pretty perilous job to police as a serving officer.
It's horrible. In the city centres, normally you get back up in numbers quite quickly. But if you're in a village or a town where it's not a city and you haven't got a lot of officers on duty, it can be very frightening, lonely time. And I don't have to tell you, Ian, we look at these television programmes now and even social media, the anger, the hatred, the violence, the abuse, the insults that people throw at the police, and they don't think twice about assaulting them. Now, you imagine being a rural cop, knowing that your nearest backup is 15, 20 minutes away, and you're dealing with 10 or 15 thugs that have got no respect for you whatsoever and will assault, bite and kick you and do all the things that are done to officers. And I think the police have had enough. Last year, 9,000 left. This year, another 9,000 left. And when you look at police officers now, Ian, how often do you see an experienced cop that normally look as though they've just come out of university? That's because too many now joined the police, wanted to do the job that the public wanted, patrol the streets, investigate crime, and reassure the public and challenge the bad guys. And now we've put the handcuffs and the shackles on the police and not the criminals.
A word, if you would, as well, Norman, the potential early release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper. Certainly this seems to be an area that the Labour government have yet to fully decide on. I don't know whether they have the legal ability to do that, whether that's the problem. If they stop these people being released early, do they have to stop others of similar offence? I mean, I think we'd all agree we don't want any of these people released early. The Conservatives are attempting to block this. I don't know how far they will get, but it's worth reiterating the extraordinary and repugnant nature of a policy that would allow killers like this, and let's not understate the severity of what these people did. They killed a man, albeit manslaughter, in the most horrific way.
Well, the sad thing is they were not convicted of murder. If they'd been convicted of murder and they were given, for example, 15 or 20 years, they would have to serve every single day of that sentence. Because they were convicted of murder, they serve in general 2/3. But it's this government that have said that because of prison overpopulation, we're going to release criminals like that at 50% stage. Now, my account on social media has been helping support the petition. I've just checked, we're up to 633,000.
Amazing.
In 2 days. Now, I'll leave you with this thought, is we have a criminal justice system and prisons are to punish those that commit a crime, to deter others from committing that crime, to reassure the public that those that have committed crimes against them and hurt them and have left them out of property or have injured them badly are being punished. And fourthly, it's about rehabilitation. And we have people in prison, Ian, that commit serious crime and persistent crime. Many of those have they've exhausted all the alternatives, all the community centres we hear about. So the right people are sent to prison for the right reason. So how can we have too many people in prison? We have the right people in prison. We just don't have a government with the will and a backbone to build new prisons and to protect society, which is their duty of care.
Absolutely spot on. Always common sense stuff. Norman, great to see you this morning. Thank you. Norman Brennan, former police officer. Let's get a voice note on the Tories. Yeah, they're back front and centre. Can they reclaim the narrative and the conversation? Let's hear from Alan. Morning, Alan.
Morning, Ian. Big Al from Swansea, yeah, buddy. Would I trust the Tories? Absolutely not. And why on earth would I? They had 14 years, right, of saying this, doing completely different. Same with Labour, bunch of liars. The only people you can trust is Reform. They're saying they'll do it, and they will do it. All their policies are all priced up, ready to go. So what these clowns now in government, in opposition, on the front bench, what they say is totally irrelevant. If they say, vote for me, I'll give you £1 million, I say, shove it up your, where the sun don't shine, buddy. So, bunch of charlatans, and I think it'll be election now in November. My sources tell me, and that's fact, pal. Have a lovely day. Ta-ra.
Should council staff who don't follow the law be sacked, and should councillors who urge them not to lose their roles and lose the whip?
Well, I don't know. Is the answer.
Why don't you know?
It would depend.
I know the answer to that.
Depend on the circumstances.
No, it wouldn't.
Before I start calling for
if you urge people to break the law, you shouldn't be in public office.
I think it would depend on the manner in which that was done and the circumstances.
Well, why?
But my overall point is that they need to abide by the code.
So if they need to abide by the code and they don't, they'd be breaking the law and urging someone else to break the law.
The entire city is being overwhelmed, and there are people who bear direct responsibility. Those responsible are the national government, led by Pedro Sanchez and his ministers, as well as Mr. Marlaska, and of course, the European institutions, which have completely failed in what's supposed to be the European Union's external border.
Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
Well, Morocco, of course, is hosting the next World Cup. I mean, are we suggesting that...
Oh, don't start me on the World Cup. We'll get
the country that is hosting the next World Cup is too unsafe. It's so unsafe.
Oh, great point.
People have to cross continents to come to Europe. And, of course, I have seen...
Invading the country. And what that is weak law, bad management, but very liberal law. They passed a couple of laws, and people read. You know, people are smart. They read from other countries, and they swam that 3-mile sweat wall, however they got in, but nobody's seen anything like it. That will look good compared to what's going to happen to the United States. The biggest thing, the worst thing that Biden did is allowing 25 million people into our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. It's Collins in for Kyle for today and next week as well. Loads on the agenda. including this one, which we've been exploring in the last section as well. We'll keep this one going. Do you trust the Tories on immigration? Now, bear with me on this. You might think that's just a mad question, given their previous on this one. But Kemi Badenoch is trying to change the conversation. This one feeds into the welfare area as well. She's pledging to evict foreign nationals from council housing under plans to end Britain's status as the cash machine of the world. Now, is this a move in the right direction? I think most people say, well, that makes perfect, reasonable sense. But have the Conservatives turned a corner on immigration? Because that's the big sell. That's what she's got to crack. That will always be the Gordian knot around her for the remainder of time up to a general election. Can she steal it from Reform UK? I think most people think they know the answer to that. Details on the way. Elsewhere, e-scooters now have a higher serious injury rate than motorbikes. This shouldn't surprise anyone. Have you witnessed that half-wit from hell bombing down the road merrily in one of those things? No helmet, nothing at all, no protection, doing about 40 miles an hour on a footpath. You see this all the time. And I suppose you could bring e-bikes into this as well. I'd imagine their track record isn't much better. But these things, this idea that they do 5 miles an hour is a lie. And e-scooters, by the way, should be said, are illegal. I don't know who didn't get the memo on that. You're not allowed to ride an e-scooter unless you've hired it officially from a hire scheme, which mostly don't exist in this country still. And we did talk about this yesterday. No apology on this. We are returning to the university professor who had to resign over various anomalies and, let's be honest, outright lies exposed on his previously impressive CV. It did, however, spark another more accessible and rather fun discussion about fantasists you have known. That person in the workplace that told you they were related to JFK, or they were the world champion at indoor hang gliding. They climbed Everest as a teenager. You know the kind of stuff. The secret love child of the Sultan of Brunei. All this kind of imaginative guff that people come out with, and they do it very seriously and perpetually. If you know that person, your stories, please, on the colleague or the bloke in the pub that couldn't help but tell extraordinary porkies about their life. Details on that as well. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. You drop us a voice note there as well. Paul Collins in Belfast says, I was in the Maldives last year and I ordered a Tom Collins at the bar. That's a cocktail, of course. The barman said he'd adapted the drink to an Ian Collins, as he was his brother. And a new version of a classic cocktail had become the housewife's favourite. As the barman was only 22 from Sri Lanka, I found this claim somewhat doubtful. I'd love to believe that is true. I would love to believe that a random barman in the Maldives said, no, we don't do the Tom Collins. We do the Ian Collins. Yeah. Nothing. Be a nice thought. This from Sean in Bicester, who says, regarding Walter Mitty characters, back in the 90s, there was a local mechanic who used to drink in our local. He must have been about 200 years old to have done everything he said he'd done. He once described a dogfight he had with is that a MiG-15 in North Korea using a packet of fags, which was his Voodoo fighter and Zippo lighter, as the MiG using the lighter flame as the afterburner. I see what you mean. I once saw him in a pub with a camera next to his pint. I asked what he'd been up to. He said, I've been doing a photo shoot with Sam Fox in London. That is brilliant. I love that. A Page 3 photo shoot. I actually went to a Page 3 photo shoot once. This is absolutely true. A friend of mine, his girlfriend, sent a photo to the Sun and said, I got everything to be a Page 3 girl. And they called her up. And there was a photographer called Beverly Goodway, who was a bloke. I mean, he would have had the P taken out of him at school if we can call Beverly. I think he had the last laugh. He was the Page 3 official photographer. And off we went to this photo shoot. And she did the shoot and appeared, I don't know, half a dozen times in the good old currant bun. Speaking of which, let's speak with David Wooding, columnist at The Sun, never knowingly done a topless photo shoot, David, but I'm sure you're very familiar with the work of Beverly Goodway over the years.
I am indeed. I've been in that studio.
Yeah.
Not during one of the sessions, I hasten to add.
What a lovely guy he was as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a real pro. I mean, that was where he made his name, but he could do other types of photography too.
Yes.
Great Great operator.
Absolutely right. And there was nothing kind of weird or pervy about him. It wasn't that kind of thing. He was doing a job, and it was part of the, you know, at the time, the kind of tabloid culture dictated that you'd have that. Page 3 was iconic. It was known. Americans thought it was unbelievable that we did this in a newspaper. But, you know, it went on for years. It made a lot of people very famous. Obviously, Sam Fox being right up there, but the Linda Lusardis and, of course, Katie Price.
Absolutely, yeah. That was an era, a different era, a bygone age.
Absolutely right. Listen, we've got more serious stuff. As if that isn't serious, of course. We may come back to it. Some serious stuff to get on with here. We are discussing, David, among other things, the attempt of the Conservatives, really, to turn it around. I know it's not an entirely new conversation, but it seems like quite a regular thing now where Kemi Badenoch is making quite big announcements that are in this ballpark of welfare and immigration. This one on the front page of the Mail does kind of tie in both of those factors, I suppose. Of course, the trouble she has is convincing people that she's more authentic and meaningful on the issue of immigration than Reform UK are. Oh, we've lost you, Dave, momentarily. We've lost Dave's sound. We will. I don't think he can hear me either, because I think he's still speaking. We'll get Dave Wooding back on in just a second. Let me just do a couple more messages from you. This from Gaz, who says, I know someone who declared he had an MBE, put it loads of trade magazines, etc. He also told people he was working for MI5. When he got outed by a local paper, his mum told the editor they shouldn't publish it as he was undercover. Don't say his name if you read this out. I haven't got his name. Thank you for that. There's a lot of people like that. Back on social housing, Andrew says no social housing for foreign nationals under the Tories. Will they still pay housing benefit? If they will, then it's window dressing only. One here from, I don't think any names given on this one. I got friendly with a guy about 15 years ago. We became really good friends to the point we moved into where he moved into a spare room I had in a city centre apartment. He was always telling everybody stories about his past, but really long stories with too many details. I also noticed over time some of the stories he told changed when they were repeated, and some could literally be complete reverse stories of the one he told just weeks before. When he got drunk, which he did a lot at the time, he would say he was ex-army, ex-police, ex-SAS, flew planes, a captain, first officer, even air traffic control. He was also very secretive, multiple phones, running out to meet people or going to random and strange places at odd times. I got really paranoid. I thought I saw people following us, strange cars parked outside, and in the end, I had to get out of the apartment and cut contact with him. I told people about it, and they all thought I was losing the plot. Then 6 years ago, he was all over the media as an MI5 operative who brought down the new real IRA. Wow. So there was some truth to it. Maybe not all of it, because nobody would have done all of those things, you might have thought. That's always the strange thing with the Fantasist Brigade, isn't it? Whether you've worked with them, met them in a pub, they're often in a pub, telling grand stories about, oh, yeah, I'm good friends with, I don't know, John Terry or something. Me and John, yeah, we used to train together as teenagers. It could be that, which is kind of, it's a lie. But then there are those who perpetually live a narrative of lies, and the lies are fantastic. And we sort of, in a weird way, there is a gravitational pull to those people because the stories are unbelievable. And they're so unbelievable, you think there must be a scintilla of truth somewhere in the story. Surely. Nobody could continually lie like that. But that is what gets them out of the bed. I don't even think... often they don't, as distinct from the one we just heard, they don't have to think about the lie. It just comes naturally. They haven't got to go, all right, what did I say last week or whatever. They just say it, even if it does change. We have Dave Wooding back. I don't know what happened there, Dave, but we've got you back. How are you?
You were silenced. I don't know what it was.
Well, you went silent at our end, and I went silent at your end. So
yeah,
maybe someone's trying to tell the pair of us something.
I think MI5 are
yeah, I think they're absolutely bang on. They don't like what we've got to say here. We were talking there, Dave, just about the Tories trying to reclaim conversations and reclaim stories as their own. And they're obviously on things like immigration, welfare. They're right up against it, firstly because their past in recent years tells a different story, and they're up against outfits like Reform UK.
Yes, and of course, a lot of the migrants who have come in are from what was known as the Boris wave, or most of them actually came in during the Rishi Sunak's period as well, which I wonder why it's not being called the Rishi Tsunami, but never mind.
I like that.
Yes, but nevertheless, we've got a situation where they're trying to catch up with Reform on this, and this policy seems a little bit on the hard-edged angle of controlling migration. To actually evict people rather than to do it retrospectively will shock a few people, I think.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. And whether it comes to anything, obviously there's always sort of ECHR considerations. I know they say they're getting out of that, but there's existing human rights laws, and there's a whole tranche of lawyers out there who would happily fight the cases for these people.
Absolutely, and the truth is, Ian, that already you can't get a council house if you're on a work visa or a student visa. So the question you must ask is, well, who is this going to affect? Maybe people who've gained asylum, and that is the truth. Well, if you've been granted asylum, then you are entitled to a house. If you have come to Britain while escaping war or persecution, then you come here with nothing, and you do need to be accommodated in that way. The problem with asylum is that there are so many people cheating the system. Most of those many of those rather, who are coming over on small boats are basically economic migrants playing the system, claiming asylum, and they are giving asylum seekers a bad name. I mean, Britain has a good record of giving a sanctuary for people who are, I mean, you go back to the Berlin Wall, people fleeing oppression in Eastern Europe. We were there to help them out and give them a home where they had freedom. But so many people now cheating the system, and people coming over with violent records as well, and creating havoc in this country, that it sort of besmirches all asylum seekers, and we mustn't lose sight of that.
Absolutely right. And of course, just back to the issue of social housing, as many people have pointed out, getting in touch with us, Dave, that quite a lot of people are in private rented accommodation. It's not social at all, and I think you'd probably say in many areas it's the bulk of accommodation where these people might be placed that wouldn't actually be social housing anyway. They would just be private landlords.
Absolutely, but I do think that the general premise is correct, that British people who've lived here, paid their taxes, contributed towards society should be at the top of the list, because that is what part of the issue of mass migration or uncontrolled migration is, that they're being shoved to the back of the queue, and it's the same as happening in schools and hospitals. And again, if we're going to allow large numbers of people to come into this country, we have to make sure we have the infrastructure to deal with them and cope with them.
Indeed. David, thank you. Great to have you on that point of the Tories. Can they turn it around? David Wooding is columnist at The Sun and political journalist of decades. Big experience in that field. Mary is in Hemel Hempstead. Your thoughts on this, Mary? Good morning to you.
Well, quite frankly, the solution, as far as I can see, is these people coming over, OK, they come in, put them in containment areas, not allowed to walk around the streets. There are several military sites that must have very high fencing and barred gates. They are put in there. If there aren't sufficient brick buildings, they have military tents. We're not an Arctic country, so it won't be that freezing cold. They can't claim that. And as well, another thing, this nonsense about leaving the ECHR and the human rights, it's going to take too long. It won't work immediately.
But, well, indeed, by the time you've got policies in place, you'll have another, 30,000, 50,000 people living here. And that, to me, seems to be one of what you said at the beginning seems like common sense. Why is there not, it could be civilised, it could be warm and safe, and there'll be food and people won't be beaten, they'll be looked after in a human sense. quite why or how you're able to nip over on a boat from Calais, wind up in the Four Seasons or in a former army barracks, and mooch around wherever you like, particularly if you've come from a country like Iran, where there's a big focus, of course, on people coming from Iran for obvious reasons. Curious times we live in. Mary, thank you very much indeed. Will we still be going round in this same grim circle a year or two from now? I hope not, but I fear we might. 0344 499 1000, 20 past 8. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, morning, welcome back. Homer Common Sense, Ian Collins in for Jeremy Carl. Loads of comment coming from you on a variety of stuff. We've got the serious, we've got the light-hearted, of course. Dave in South Gloucestershire says, Ian, interesting that the Tories' social housing ban will not affect EU citizens. That's right, this is they would not be part of this. Their definition of foreign nationals seems quite loose. Do we know what Kemi's position is on the EU, our relationship with it, and whether closer alignment is part of their position? Or will she double down and capitalise on the benefits, freedoms and independence of Brexit? Their policies seem to be full of loopholes and get-out clauses which will enable them to carry on with business as usual if they regain power. I still don't trust them, says Dave in South Gloucestershire. Well, if you're an EU citizen that already lives here, there's a settled status arrangement. I kind of understand that. But if it's anyone coming in from, assuming this policy came in, I don't know what they would do in that respect. Gary on the Isle of Skye, back to the fantasy theme. He says, a slant on the fantasy theme. I went to visit my son in Leith, Edinburgh. He said he'd been talking to a guy in the pub the night before. He'd been talking to a guy who said he had been world boxing champion, fought on the same bill as Muhammad Ali at Madison Square Gardens. He said he was the first overseas boxer to be Ring Magazine Boxer of the Year and had fought Roberto Duran. My son was laughing and shaking his head. I asked what pub it was, and he told me. I asked what he looked like. He said he was a small, skinny guy with thick glasses. I told him that was Ken Buchanan, and everything he told you was actually true. I love that, because that happens sometimes. You can genuinely bump into somebody with a unbelievable story. You know, a friend of mine, this is absolutely true. We were talking once about claims to fame, and she randomly said, I did the Queen's makeup for her Christmas speech. She worked for a makeup company. She was very young at the time as well. They got a phone call because the makeup artist had dropped out or got ill. She was then ferried down to the palace, met a sort of lady in waiting, who said, right, this is the protocol, it's Her Majesty and this, that and the other. In you go. She went in this room. It was literally just her and the Queen. Did the makeup, went back to her workplace, got another phone call half an hour later saying, the Queen would like to see you at Buckingham Palace. Goes back again, same door, same lady in waiting, taken up the stairs. The Queen said, I apologise, I didn't get a chance to say thank you. Would you like a look around? And took her on a little private tour. She was literally in her 20s, this girl. And it's it's such a... She signed a what they called an NDO, non-disclosure thing, and of course you don't keep that stuff quiet, do you? She's not going to go to jail for it. I think she did for a while. So when anyone around her talks about claims to fame, oh yeah, I once met Shane Ritchie, or once had a, she trumps it all with that. She said it was very weird because you're about as close to the Queen's, you're doing her makeup and her eyeliner, bit of lippy here and there. Curious. So that wasn't, there you go. There's a true story that would sound like, no way did you do that. And she told the story, there's much more to it, by the way. Told it brilliantly. Let's speak to Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost UK. She might have done your makeup at some point, Kevin. I don't know. It's possible.
A slight touch-up here and there,
Absolutely. Ferried round to Schofield Mansions to, for a special appearance you were making on the show. Who knows? We were talking to David Wooding as well. You know David well, of course, and lots of political voices on this, because I'm genuinely intrigued with this era we are in, or the era that Conservatives are in. The Conservatives still sort of hold the record as the most successful political party, I think, in the Western world in history. They've been there. The greats have run that party. They presided over government, totemic decisions, historic decisions. Churchill, Thatcher, Truss. The list goes on. I obviously slightly jest on the last one. But now they're nowhere, and they're kind of trying to make a comeback, and Kemi Badenoch is making some good strides in this area because she's got to bring her party with her. The raw reality is, there's no reinventing the wheel in talking about this, I suppose, Kevin, but it's, they're on a hiding to nothing almost, because, of course, they're saying we're going to do this, that and the other, when their past, and it's not their past from 30 years ago, their past from 30 months ago, says something very different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, history tells you that it's very difficult for a party that's been in government for a long time, is thrashed at an election, to then come back after one term. It's very difficult indeed. Now, you're right, Kemi Badenoch, personally, I think is doing much better. She got off to a bit of a shaky start. There was all sorts of rumours about, will she face a challenge when the time is right? All that has gone away now. There's no more talk about a challenge to Kemi Badenoch. She's as absolutely safe as houses. But she'll be worried, though, when she looks at the opinion polls, that although her own personal approval is going up, the Tory rating isn't really going up at the same time. And I think that's because the brand took such a kicking, particularly in the last few years of the last Tory government, that it's going to take a long time to repair that damage. And then you throw into the mix the fact that she's been challenged from the right by Reform and, I suppose to a lesser extent, by Restore, which other Tory leaders have not had to worry about. In the past, they didn't really have a party on the right that was rivaling them for government. So that is the challenge that she's got, and I think that's maybe reflected in some of the policy decisions that she's taking right now.
I do wonder, you're right, because I remember we used to sit here in this studio, didn't we, Kevin? After PMQs, you'd come from PMQs and come over to us, and we would talk about how well Kemi had done, and it was sort of every week, it was like, it ain't happening, there's something not happening. And then there was a moment, I don't know what happened, whether there was some media training, I don't know what it was. She's obviously an intelligent person and she can hold a conversation together. And we all remember her as business secretary when she was really robust at the dispatch box. She would give those kind of great ripostes to her opposite number, and she was on fire. And then it sort of went to mush when she became the leader. Very different job when you're actually in charge. So she's turned that corner. I do wonder, and I say this without any qualification, I just wonder if the entirety of what we said at the beginning, most successful party, still a big brand, still associated with what many people would say a lot of huge positives. I know people will have an argument on that, but for right-wing voters, a lot of positives in that. They still have the machinery. They still have the kind of the connections, if you like. Some of those old voices from the past, doubtless still sit advising in different capacities. They have something there that it's like dusting down a big old machine in a Pixar movie and seeing if it still works, and firing it up and going, oh, actually, we've still got something here. I wonder if it's that, forget the more recent history of policy, but the enormity of their brand can still save them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can certainly rely on the brand. I think a lot of voters, more moderate right of centre voters, are still very wary of Nigel Farage and Reform, certainly very wary of Rupert Lowe and Restore. They don't want to vote Lib Dem, they certainly don't want to vote Labour. So there is definitely a constituency there, I think, of maybe more moderate Tories that Kevin Badenoch can absolutely appeal to. However, I know from speaking to one or two on that wing of the party, they are just a little bit concerned. They fully support Kevin Badenoch, they think she's the right leader, but they are just a little bit worried about the party drifting off a little bit too far to the right. They say, you can't out-reform, you can't really beat Nigel Farage at his own game.
Yeah.
And that is the challenge for her. Now, as I say, she's consolidated her own position, but the next challenge is to kick on and try and take the Tories back up to becoming the main party on the right of British politics.
Yeah, it's almost as if they need something catastrophic to happen to reform, really. It's going to have to come from that angle rather than perhaps any other.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, listen, to be fair, Reform have been doing a reasonable job at shooting themselves in the foot, it looks like, over the last few months. But you just wonder whether, Nigel Farage will win this by-election, I think, and then he's got a bit more wind in his sails, and then they can start a bit more of a fight back, and then the pressure is back on Kevin Badenoch.
Yeah, I do wonder. Just a word briefly, Kevin, if you would, on this Cambridge professor. I mean, it's an interesting story. You look at it from one angle and you go, this is just hilarious, this sort of CV of sort of superhuman ingenuity and capability that this professor had. I mean, no one's doubting he's a clever bloke and all the rest of it. That's not up for discussion. And if he was on your pub quiz team, he'd probably be rather helpful. But there was a lot of elaboration there, claims of publishing books, claims of single-handedly raising £5.5 million for a charity when he was actually part of a cohort of over 100 people, claims of running 67,000 marathons every day for 10 years or whatever it was. So there's all of this stuff. So it's quite funny in one respect, but in another respect, of course, because of what it entails, it's not that funny. And I'm quite staggered that the government haven't. There's all sorts of accusations of DEI hiring and the like. We haven't really heard anything from Labour on this.
No, I think Labour just don't want to touch this story with a stick, to be honest with you. They just want to stay out of it. Clearly, a lot of people on the right are almost cock a hoop, actually, at this fella's downfall. I mean, it is unbelievable. The story is literally unbelievable.
Yeah.
Some of the claims he was making were just fantastical, and how he managed to pull the wool over so many people's eyes, senior, very clever people's eyes, is just, I mean, you could write a book on it probably.
Yeah.
But I think Labour and the government are thinking, listen, we've got enough on our plate with we just don't want to get involved in this whatsoever. So I think that's probably quite a smart move, really.
I think you might be right on that, Kevin. Thank you, as ever. Good to see you. Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost UK. Thank you to him. Thoughts on that? Can we just play? We're going to take a short pause. We are going to speak, by the way, to a forensic psychologist in a moment about fantasists and all of this stuff. Can we no, in fact, I'll save it. I'll save it for when we speak to Kerry Danes in a moment, and we can play that clip of Mr. Ardé, Professor Ardé, meeting his new boss. I mean, seeing or hearing is believing. Stand by for that, coming next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes in from Brian in Northampton regarding Walter Mitty characters. I know a man who said he would reduce immigration to tens of thousands. Yeah. Could be text on Brian. Thank you for that. RJ in Glasgow. I worked offshore with a medic who was an outrageous Walter Mitty. He claimed he was in the SBS, which was patently nonsense. As a veteran myself, this was annoying enough, and I certainly didn't serve in Special Forces. As proof, he would produce a photo of some tough-looking soldiers posing with all manner of weapons in some jungle environment. I pointed out that he wasn't in the picture, and with a straight face he replied, "Who do you think was holding the camera?" It's a great answer. He was an absolute fool and was laughed out of the room. They do exist. Let's speak to the forensic psychologist, Kerry Danes. Kerry, good morning to you. Nice to have you with us. There is something in the human condition of some people who, they don't have to go there. They choose to go there. Their disposition is a tissue of lies. It almost gets them out of bed in the morning. What is that?
Well, what it isn't is it's not a mental illness. So I want to say that straight up, but it is associated with different types of personality, narcissistic personality particularly. So pathological lying, or what we like to call pseudologica fantastica, which is just a great title, isn't it?
I love that. It sounds like a new Disney movie.
Yeah, it's basically just chronic excessive lying. And it's disproportionate to any kind of gain because, of course, you might just be a straight up con artist. You might be somebody who is lying because it benefits you financially to do so.
Yes.
But these are people who lie even when there's no clear purpose, or even when it's likely to shoot them in the foot. I mean, Jason Arday, these ridiculous lies at some point were going to be his downfall, weren't they? They were just so obvious that it had to blow up in his face at some point. But these fabrications typically cast the liar as somebody who is exceptionally talented, heroic, like the last story we heard about, a Walt. You know, we often get people who say that they've served in the military and they've done all kinds of heroic things when they haven't. Or they cast themselves as a tragic hero. You know, they can't ever be something more ordinary than that. And I think that what is the interesting thing to me as a psychologist is that some researchers say that actually there's a level of self-belief in these lies. The people know that what they're saying is not true on reflection. However, they feel that the story should be true.
Yeah.
They feel that they are entitled in some way to them because they should be viewed as special. They should be viewed as important. And I think that when you understand that, you realize that this is a psychological defense, often against really low self-esteem and just the pain of being dreadfully ordinary.
Yeah, a sense of entitlement in that respect. And what I find fascinating, having worked with a couple of characters over the years who do this, or not necessarily worked with, on one occasion, yes, but on another occasion, you know, the guy in the pub that would just tell these lies. It was the automatic and very almost autopilot way with which they could lie. It wasn't as if they had to sit there and think, oh, what do I say at this point? It just came out. Like, I don't even think they'd sat home and written it. It just came out. It was it became their personality almost.
Yeah, it is because, well, look, we all fantasize, don't we? In fact, it's very natural and normal, particularly in that space just before we fall asleep, where we're trying to nod off, that, you know, our mind wanders off and we tend to live in our ideal world, if you like. I'm not talking about sexual fantasies. I'm just talking about everyday fantasies of your life being that little bit better than it actually is. But for these people, it's very important to them. It's about how they are viewed by other people, because they're defending this fragile self-image. And actually, you know, whenever they feel threatened by just being ordinary or not being very interesting while they talk to you down the pub, you know, they just automatically go to this fantasy that they've rehearsed in their mind so many times that it actually feels emotionally true to them.
Yes. Yeah.
So some part of them knows, but yet they've lost touch a little bit, not fully. It's not delusional, but a little bit with reality because it's so emotionally important to them.
It is. It's curious because I think there is a certain mesmeric nature in these people because they can be fascinating to talk to. And I think sometimes you find yourself thinking, well, it must be a lie, but maybe some of it is true because some of these lies are told in great detail. And it sort of forces you to think, well, surely he didn't make it all up. Some of it must be true. So we end up kind of falling for it, even though part of us knows it's nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they are entertaining to talk to because of all, you know, they've got all of these wild stories, but also it's that knowing that they are lying. So it's also fascinating from that point of view because you're sitting there thinking, surely you're not expecting me to buy this.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of the repeated telling of these stories, and they've all got the same, you know, grandiosity, haven't they, as the through line through the stories. That's the thread. And so when you tell a story over and over again, using the word I, you emotionally connect to it, and so it makes you a better liar. Yeah. You know, you see them having the emotions that you would expect from somebody, and often when they are you know, when it's put to them, this can't possibly be true, look, there's evidence here that this isn't true, that's when you see real, you know, persistence, because they don't go, yeah, you've caught me. You know, they really do hang on to it. And
yes.
So you're being really unfair to me because it's such a threat to them.
What happens then if somebody in a pub situation, I've seen this sort of play out, but and seen the odd person try to catch someone out. Yeah. But people are quite polite as well, especially as Brits. We're quite polite and we don't want to embarrass somebody. But if a situation arose where someone did stand up and said, mate, you've been telling that story for years, it's not true, you know it's not true, we all know it's not true, why are you lying? How would the perpetual Walter Mitty character react to that?
Well, I think that they don't just collapse into a simple confession. Yeah. They tend to add new details, or they'll say, well, I'm very, very hurt that you won't believe that this is true. And often these stories, you know, they put them in this heroic role, but it's also a tragic role as well. So it's, how dare you question that? Why would anybody lie about such things? I think that when you've got somebody that is highly narcissistic, though, that's when you really see somebody who feels that their sense of self is under attack. And that's when confrontation triggers real defensiveness, rage, you know, counterattack. Because it's not just, you know, all right, I've told a lie, I've told an untruth. It's my very core self is being assaulted here. So, you know, we sometimes call this narcissistic injury or bursting the narcissistic bubble. And that's when people get really, you know, quite angry. So that's another reason why people don't want to confront them.
Yeah, that's a good point to finish on. Listen, thank you very much, Kerry. Great to have you on with us. Nice to talk. Kerry Danes, forensic psychologist, with us on the programme. It is, the more you think about it, it's really fascinating. I'm genuinely fascinating that I don't know what it, you know, was it 1 in 10,000 people or whatever? I mean, there's liars and people who make stuff up and exaggerate their importance, and you meet those kind of chancers and bluster merchants all the time. I mean, that's easy. You've got the others that, as Kerry was saying, some people lie for gain because they're trying to, you know, either get in the case of the professor, get a job, They might be doing it because they're setting up a business deal and they're lying about the returns and only they're going to make the money. That's a kind of different thing. These are mostly people who just lie and they don't need to. That's the strangest thing. The incessant BS merchant you meet in the pub. Christine says, you wouldn't believe how many SAS operatives have tried to chat me up in a bar over the years. That's the classic one, isn't it? You'd have thought that the Water Mitty Brigade would have just dropped that one by now and gone, no, I can't do the SAS one. Everyone's done that. Brian in Northampton says, regarding this, I know of a man... Oh, yes, I did reduce... The man who said he'd reduce immigration to tens of thousands. That was a beauty. Rob, back on e-bike, says, I'm 66. I have an e-bike. Its speed is restricted. You can bike faster on an ordinary bike. I don't wear a helmet. I'm not a child. Those who cause problems on bikes and e-bikes will always do so. It's not a bike issue. It's a rider issue. I'm sure that's true, but some of those... Is there a difference between an e-bike and a... No, an e-bike is an electric bike. I mean, there's some that clearly go more than a bike. They go the speed of a car, pretty much. So what are those things? This is Paul in Tyneside. What have you got for us, Paul? Morning.
Hi, Ian. So many moons ago, when I was a young lad, I used to work at a place where we used resins and stuff.
Yeah.
And on the Friday, one of the lads got resin in his eye. So he was taken to the eye infirmary, and that was the last we saw of him until the Monday. And we're all sitting in the bait room on Monday having with sandwiches and stuff, and one of the lads said, "You look a bit down, you know." And he says, "I've had no sleep over the entire weekend." And we're like, "Oh, right, okay, well, were your eyes itching?" You're like, you know, he went, "Oh, no." He says, "I had to take my eyes out." And now you can imagine, okay, well now the entire bait room, everyone's like sandwiches, poised at mouths.
I had to take my eyes out. Go on.
Yeah, you know, and everyone's like, well, what do you mean they took your eyes out? He went, well, he says, they took my eyes out. He says, and they wouldn't turn the lights off in the room. And so I couldn't get any sleep. And everyone's like, what you on about? He says, I'm lying in bed. He says, but my eyes were in a jar on the side and I couldn't get any sleep because the lights were on. And everyone's like, how? And everyone was like, how do you know that your eyes were out? He went, well, I could see myself lying in bed. And at that point there, okay, he got bombarded with sandwiches, topics, everything, you know, just got started off him, you know. But honestly, mate, that's probably about the best one which I've ever had.
That's an absolute beauty. My eyes were in a jar. I could see myself laying in bed. Love it. What were they connected to? There's another question. Paul, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you in a couple of moments. This is Talk.
Without the plagiarism, allegations. That's what's the start.
Would it be a story if he was white?
It wouldn't be a story if he was white at all, because he wouldn't have had there's no scrutiny that would have been put on him.
Well, he wouldn't have become famous, would he? He wouldn't have been a guest editor on the Today programme, the BBC, because he wasn't the youngest white professor at Cambridge.
He was the guest editor because he was talented. He could be talented. I've done things in the media because I'm good at things, not because I'm black. Like, we don't just get things because we're black, we get things because we're good.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 10 to 9 on the home of Common Sense. Let's get a word with Isabel Oakeshott, regular with us, of course, here on Talk Breakfast. Isabel, morning to you. Oh, you're not? She's not here, so I do apologise. I don't know why I thought she was here. She's here later. I should mention this, however, because Isabel's going to be speaking to us. She's got a new podcast out called The Westminster Report. You can find it on YouTube. You can like and subscribe and do all the usual things. So let's have a little listen to a clip from that. Isabel Oakeshott talking about the amount of money we give to the French. Yeah, it's sizable and growing. In order to laughably stop migration. Have a listen.
We continue, thanks to the Home Office, the British taxpayers continuing to pay hundreds of millions of pounds to the French. This is outrageous. You know, if I were in charge, if it were me in the Home Office or me in Number 10, I would be demanding all our money back, and I would be suing them for that, and I would also be launching a trade war. And in that way, you are going to exert the leverage on the French, make it hurt for them, because it sure as hell hurts for the British people to be accommodating that.
And Isabel will join us after the news at 9 o'clock. Back to the issue of e-scooters. Tony in Lancashire. Tony, what have you got? Morning.
Morning, UK.
I'm good. What's happening?
So e-scooters, they would have been in my life for a while. I mean, they still are in the town that I live in. I was a driving instructor for a while, and where I live, it's between Liverpool and Manchester.
Yep.
And Andy Burnham put in the bus route for us from Lee, and that is a regular run for the drug dealers whose company vehicle is the Saron electric bike. That's the one that you can buy. And all you need to do is, because electric bikes, I believe, are restricted to 16 miles an hour.
Apparently.
For UK law. However, you get a Saron, there's a green cable, I'm informed, bright green cable, and all you do is you cut it and you've instantly got 45 miles an hour.
Wow.
So that's what these guys are using. I was actually going through this speed camera near where I live. As I was going past, this was night time in the dark. This guy comes past me, seen him regular. He's on his back wheel, wheeling the bike past me, so he's doing 35, 40 miles an hour, with his arm trailing behind him as he was weaving. He's dressed in black on a black bike with a black balaclava with no lights at night.
Yeah,
he
safe. Very aware of the road rules, these guys.
Yeah. Well, we've recently, one of them's been in a real serious accident, and it hit the BBC. It's the one where he basically landed on his head. He's T-boned a Tesla at about 40 miles an hour.
Blimey.
So that's made the local news as well. But I had another occasion where I had a student in when I was teaching. We were on a 20-mile-an-hour road, and one came down the pavement, wheeling down the pavement. So we were undertaken whilst he was on the pavement, and as soon as he was in front of us, he just shot straight across the front of us, still on his back wheel, and off down a side road. But the canal and the bus route that I was on about, it's used by the drug gangs in Liverpool and Manchester. And so they ferry backwards and forwards up and down the canals. So it's become quite dangerous on the canals. For me, they should be completely banned. They are so dangerous. They're silent. They're fantastic for thieves and whatever, because they're really quick. You've got an instant power. There's no noise. And they're just the absolute bane of any law-abiding citizen these days. Every one of them should be seized and destroyed, as far as I'm concerned.
You're absolutely bang on, and they do seem to be given a free pass. I would imagine the police that we just haven't got the time to stop all of these things, particularly in certain areas where you are, Tony, down in the centre of Manchester or the centre of London, those kind of places where they are used an awful lot. And I think half the time, if a cop did see them, where are they going to chase them? Police car can't go down an alleyway, a bike can. Thank you to Tony in Lancashire. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. What have you got for us, Laura? Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Well, morning, rather. Yeah, that's about right.
Confused.com.
Every time.
Well, you're on the morning show. That's why you're confused.
You're not wrong.
I just want to talk about this professor. I feel that there is a lot more to this. I think he's talked his way and cheated his way from A-levels onwards. We don't know how much he has plagiarized in terms of his degree when he was an undergraduate, his master's, etc. And I wonder if, a lot of it was to do with, he was very, very good at talking. He probably did a very good interview into Cambridge. And he had the right skin colour, simple as that. And he's grown up in a world where, kids from certain backgrounds were given more access to academia because it suited them. And we need to talk about this now, because I think he is bright in many ways, because he's managed to, he has the gift of the gab, and he's obviously, he's not stupid by any means in terms of his academic ability, and he's got a good brain, but he's used it very cleverly. And I think actually the whole thing is a sham, and he would never have been a professor at Cambridge if you maybe look back at how he got.
You do now wonder. It's funny, I had a message from Kevin O'Sullivan, our esteemed colleague, since we've been talking to this. And Kevin said, because I said, he's probably a clever bloke, this fella. And Kev said, he's not a clever bloke. His PhD title has an apostrophe in the wrong place, and he spelt poultry. He's a Dumbo, says Kevin.
Well, he's got a point, because anyway, now kids, even when they go to Oxford and Cambridge, apparently they spend the first year teaching them how to write and spell. Yeah. So,
That's a bit grim, isn't it? That if you have to be taught to spell at Oxford.
No. Well, it is. No, that's the point, is that at school they don't learn grammar and spelling like I did.
Yeah, it's kind of has been somewhat diluted, and I think the new Education Secretary kind of hit on this as well. Laura Jane, I've got to move because the news is upon us, but thank you very much indeed for that. Great comment as well. This one from Georgina in sunny Godmanchester says, my daughter's father told me he used to phone in and talk to you a number of years ago. He also said you nearly went to a football match with him. He was a season ticket holder at Arsenal. I know you're Chelsea. I did hear him on the radio talking to you, but don't know if he exaggerated any chat. I mean, he might have said, you'll have to come to a Arsenal game. That's possible. Georgina says, I like the new glasses. They're not actually new glasses, they're emergency glasses. They're ones that were pulled out of a drawer because of damage to the normal ones. And that's a faff, isn't it? Getting your flipping goggles sorted out. What's a set of lenses cost these days, Sam? I don't know, 300 quid or something? Then you've got to buy the actual frames. I mean, you can get some El Cheapos that look as good as the others. I've never bothered about brands when it comes to glasses. So I whipped these ones out the drawer, and I thought they would, just to look at them, and I didn't know they had any lenses, prescription lenses in it. There's some, I don't know what's in it. They seem to be long-sighted and short-sighted all in one go. Maybe they were invented by Professor Jason Arday. He's invented the dual lens that no one else has done before, shortly before he went to the moon on the first space shuttle. Lots more still to come. Isabel Oakeshott is going to be with us after the news. Looking forward to that. The ways to get in touch, whether it's Walter Mitty, the Tories turning it around and reclaiming the conversation, 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 9 o'clock.
The entire city is being overwhelmed, and there are people who bear direct responsibility. Those responsible are the national government, led by Pedro Sanchez and his ministers, as well as Mr. Marlaska, and of course, the European institutions, which have completely failed in what's supposed to be the European Union's external border.
Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
Well, Morocco, of course, is hosting the next World Cup. I mean, are we suggesting that...
Oh, don't start me on the World Cup. We'll get
the country that's hosting the next World Cup is too unsafe. It's so unsafe.
Oh, great point.
People have to cross continents to come to Europe, and of course, I have seen
tens of thousands are just invading the country, and what that is weak law, bad management, but very liberal law. They passed a couple of laws, and people read. You know, people are smart. They read from other countries, and they swam that 3-mile sweat law, however they got in, but nobody's seen anything like it. That will look good compared to what's going to happen to the United States. The biggest thing, the worst thing that Biden did is allowing 25 million people into our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, morning. It's a Friday morning. It's the final hour of the first week, sitting in for Jeremy Kyle, but I'm back next week for another blast here at the home of common sense. So much to get through in this section. We have been talking about the, and I say this with a straight face, when I ask this question: do you trust the Tories on immigration? Now, bear with me before you start discombobulating at the back. For many, that is a mad question, given their previous... it's a daft question. Well, why would you even ask that? Well, Kemi Badenoch is trying to change the conversation. Today, now this comes in with welfare reform as well. She's pledging to evict foreign nationals from council housing. There's so much wrong with this announcement, I don't even know where to start. This is under plans to end Britain's status as what she calls a cash machine for the world. Well, she's right on that point. Is this a move in the right direction? Notionally, yes. Have the Conservatives turned a corner on immigration? I don't think it's a corner they can ever frankly turn. I say this not with glee or see you serves yourself right or any of that malarkey. I genuinely, if you bought every expert, every brand expert, every PR and marketing guru, bring in James Dyson, Alan Sugar, anyone that's been at the top of their field in turning something around and making a success of it, I genuinely cannot see how the Conservatives can own this conversation. So we'll continue to talk about that, and we'll chat to Isabel Oakeshott in just a moment. Elsewhere, e-scooters now have a higher injury rate than motorbikes. It doesn't surprise me if you've witnessed some of these characters mooching down the road like Evel Knievel, cultural reference for the kids there, then you will understand what I'm saying. These things can be really quite fast. The e-bikes meant to have I think somebody said 16 mile an hour limit, which by the way is quite fast. I tell you what, try running into a wall in your workplace at 16 miles an hour. And that will give you an idea of it. I mean, don't do it, obviously, because you might sue us and go, well, a bloke on the radio told me to do it. What happened to your nose? Man on the radio told me to do it. But you get some idea. I remember our physics teacher using that as example. I think he was talking about 2 miles an hour or something. 2 miles, it doesn't sound that fast. Try walking into a wall at 2 miles an hour. It will hurt. So these things can be quite beastly. We're talking water mitty characters on the back of the Cambridge professor. That story is not going away, but it has prompted and garnered some amazing response from you on fantasists you have known. Some great subjects on that. And biscuit etiquette. On a lighter note, apparently we don't know how to behave with a packet of biscuits. I kid you not, 34% of Brits believe there's a problem. This is from leaving empty packets in the biscuit box to crumbs in bed. Oh yes, we are animals with a custard cream or a bourbon. 0344 499 1000. Tony says, I once worked with a guy who said he shared a joint with Jimi Hendrix. I worked out that the guy would have been about 4 years old when this happened. That's how you usually get them, isn't it? It's usually something of that nature. Lee says, I worked with a guy who said he was a millionaire. He said he had a helicopter, even showed pictures of the helicopter. We were full-time cleaners when he was saying this. I mean, it's always possible that you could be... I don't know, that programme, was it called Back to the Floor? John Harvey Jones or somebody like that? Was he the fellow that ran ICI? Remember them? Who went back to the shop floor. And then there's the sort of Secret Millionaire programmes where, you know, they in disguise go and work with... They only do it for a couple of days. It's not like they're there for... So, but it's possible. You might go, I'm a multi-millionaire, but I fancy being a cleaner to retain some level of normality. Maybe it is that. Jason in Brighton says, when I was in the army, we had a lad who claimed to be the second best tree climber in Wales. Who was the first? We don't know. Lots to get through. Isabel Oakeshott joins us, Talks international editor. Isabel, good morning to you. I don't think we will insult your intelligence by asking you about your biscuit habits, but I think it is fair to say that anyone puts an empty packet of something, biscuits or otherwise, back into the cupboard should be serving a lengthy prison sentence.
How annoying is that? I mean, there are a number of teenagers in this household that can hear me talking right now, and this is directed at you. Can you just stop doing that, please?
Yeah.
It's so disappointing. You open up the tin, you see the promising looking box, and then you take it out and it's just, it kind of rises up in your hand like that. There's no weight to the thing.
There's nothing inside it. Well,
why did they do that?
I don't know. I had this is crisp related rather than... I bought a packet of those, you know, a multi-pack of crisps, so you get 6 packets.
Oh, yeah.
And I bought them the other day, salt and vinegar square crisps, because I'm rather partial to those.
Oh, my God, those are so 80s.
They're so 80s, and I had a retro moment in the aisle. I was coming back on the train, I think it was on Tuesday this week, and for some reason it popped into my head, I'm going to have a packet of those salt and vinegar square crisps when I get home. And I open the cupboard. It's at the top of the cupboard to stop the little one just feeding on these things relentlessly. And the multi-pack was there. I saw it. And I reached up, pulled it out.
I know
it was an empty packet. There was nothing in it. This is abuse. This is fatherly abuse that isn't spoken about often enough.
This is pretty much every day in our household, whether it's crisps or chocolate of some sort or anything good. Basically, you can the presence of the packet is actually meaningless. It's a small cruelty, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's never, have you noticed, it's never the broccoli that gets raided though?
Never that. But speaking of small cruelties, Ian, you inflicted one on me about 15 minutes ago. There I was, you know, just leisurely getting ready, trying to make sure my hair wasn't sticking up and I looked vaguely presentable. And all of a sudden you're like, now we're going over to Isabel Oakeshott. I was like, what?
Do you know, I never, it was completely my error. It's not as if Christian, our producer, had told me to go to you. It was because we were playing that clip, but it never occurred to me that if you were listening at the other end, what you'd have thought in that very moment.
Well, it was very alarming. You know, I had kind of half my face on and the other half was still getting out of bed.
Fantastic. And then, as if that wasn't shocking enough, the news that the Tories are claiming to have turned the conversation round when it comes to immigration, that must have completely finished you off this morning.
You know what? We may just give up on today. I think it's just all been too much for me this morning. I think I'm thinking what millions of other people will be thinking. I agree with the policy. It's a great policy. But guys, you had 14 years to do this. Why didn't you do it? I mean, the statistics on this are really shocking. Half of homes in London of council houses are rented out to foreign nationals. How can that be right? It's extraordinary. You know, I think this has happened bit by bit to the point that it's sort of become baked in and people don't quite realise the scale of it. They sort of feel, a lot of people might feel, you know, they're aware that something isn't right, that an awful lot of British people who've paid into the system are waiting far too long to be able to get the help they need. Whereas, you know, a family that have fairly recently been relocated from Afghanistan appears to be doing very well nicely. But I hadn't actually realised almost half of London's social housing is let out to foreign nationals. And, you know, in some of the nicest parts of London, because of policies about, and we can argue about whether these are right or wrong, but, you know, some of these houses are in Notting Hill, Kensington and Chelsea. And it's just completely wrong. And I think the Tory policy is a brave one. You know, they've said that this will apply to existing tenancies, and people will be given 6 months to sort themselves out. And I back that. I think it's a great policy. I'm sure that Reform's doing something at least as punchy as that. But I just sort of think, why now, guys? You know, you're the ones that presided over this.
Absolutely right, and you're bang on what you said. It sort of brings me into obviously doing this for a living, and like yourself, done it forever. And you look back at different times on the political roadmap, and I look at Reform UK, and what I see coming around the corner isn't just a party that's got a robust policy on immigration or issues on welfare. I think there's something much bigger going on, a general, not just a need, but an urgency for change, where we change we completely change the template. It's like the ink cartridge has run out and we've got to take it out and put something. We're not just going to replace it. We're going to put a brand new system in place, because what we've been doing for years, you touched on it there, which is what prompted me to say this, about how this would not be a bigger story, that, you know, half of people living in London are foreign nationals in social housing. Channel migration, you know, 1,000 people a day come across a channel. It hardly makes the headlines at the moment. And this would, I'm going to sound like a stuck record here. If this was people jumping over a barrier at Heathrow Airport, the world's press would be flying news helicopters around London to talk about the story. And yet stick those same people on a rubber boat crossing the channel. And we kind of gloss over it now. We've sort of got used to, you know, ineptitude and mediocrity have become sort of buzzwords for the way we exist.
I will never accept and be casual about the sight of these people invading our country. And I suspect that few of our listeners are willing to just shrug it off either. You know, it's awful to see humans with a price tag attached, but that is the reality for the British taxpayer. And, you know, the work that I've done on this leads me again to stress that I don't blame these young men for coming over. I mean, most of them don't mean us harm. They're quite exploited. That's the truth. You know, most of these people are not paying in the conventional way. And I can also say that most of them almost literally can't string a sentence together in the English language. They are being brought over as part of a very organised black market labour racket. And I don't know how their lives are going to pan out in the UK. It's going to take them a very long time to be able to have any hope of any kind of integration. They can barely say what country they're from. But it may well be that none of that matters. It's still a better life than it would be in Sudan or Eritrea or Somalia. But the trouble is, it costs our economy so much. It costs good, hardworking British people a ruinous amount to keep subsidising this invasion. So we can't afford to get casual about it, to get shrug about it. I think rather than people just having it baked in, and I agree the establishment doesn't seem to care, people have just got a bit despairing about what they can do about it. You know, they've repeatedly voted for this to stop, and it just isn't being stopped. And I think people are almost like despairing. How can I help the situation? I can't.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, the financial side of this, I've long argued. I think you touched on it brilliantly there when you talked about, you know, people coming across. If I was living in some of those countries, I'd probably be trying to get over here on a boat, because I'd think, well, you know, I've got no hope here. We live in a small world now. Yeah. Everyone's got the internet. You can see social media. You can see, oh, my goodness, look, there's London, there's Manchester, whatever. That's a place to be. I can have a better life. I understand that business. For me, the economic argument was always a more sobering and I always thought convincing argument to have it, especially if you're talking with people on the left. I thought that was always a better way into it, rather than saying they're all going to attack our daughters, because that takes you down to a sort of, and there are elements of that, of course, but it takes you into a sort of different conversation, and then you stand accused of being a mad racist because you have robust views on it. So the economic argument is a sound one, and it's a factual one, and it can be demonstrated and shown to be true. But the social cohesion one, which I sense gets relegated in this, which I think is absolutely pivotal to this, right up there, as important as the economic argument, doesn't really get the kind of look in I think it should do.
It doesn't, and I don't think most people understand, and it's reasonable that they don't understand this, just how impoverished and unable these people are to actually stand on their own 2 feet. These individuals are coming over with handlers and agents. This is how it works, and you know, I've done an awful lot of work on this, and they're utterly dependent on people telling them what to do. And imagine landing in a country where, you know, most of us Brits don't speak Arabic. We don't speak the dialects that are spoken in all these different parts of sub-Saharan Africa and, you know, areas of the Middle East where it's not a simple, straightforward Arabic. Not that Arabic's ever straightforward. Imagine landing in a country and not being able to communicate at all. Well, what you're going to do is stick with your in quotes tribe. You're going to stick with your gang, aren't you, for a very long time, and in any case you've got to stick with your gang because you've got to pay back the cost of your passage on the boat over, and no one's talking about this. I go on and on about it because I still don't think people fully understand. These people are not paying. Some of them are, but most of them are not paying in the conventional way. So when they get, for their crossing, when they get to the UK, they have to repay their fare. Well, how are they going to do that when they're officially asylum seekers and they're not allowed to work? They can only do that by working on the black market.
Absolutely spot on. Briefly, Isabel, we mentioned about your new podcast. We played a little clip earlier. Tell us a bit more.
Well, this is called the Westminster Report, and we're going to be putting that out 2 or 3 times a week. And it's the stories of the day, but crucially, it's the stories that really matter to a talk audience. That's bread and butter to me. I love talking about the things that our listeners get going on, you know, and it's whatever it may be. There's always going to be an immigration and asylum aspect to this, but it's about a lot more than that. So this week we've been talking about the fantasist professor. We've been talking about Rupert Lowe, all the subjects that we know from the number of people that ring in to talk, that send us messages, are the subjects that really get our listeners and viewers going.
Spot on, and you can find it on YouTube. Great to have you with us, Isabel. Have a cracking weekend. Thank you, Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International Editor. 0344 499 1000. We are going to speak on a related issue in a moment. Those protests taking place in Norfolk against some houses and some areas where people believe asylum seekers are being housed. They're not happy. It kicked off. Police officer badly injured. Several arrests. We'll talk to Thomas Godfrey from The Sun in just a couple of moments right here on Talk.
49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. There's a lot going on. The Walter Mitty stuff, the people who live a fantasist lifestyle, as really, I mean, this is day 2 of talking about this. This is after the Cambridge professor, of course, decided to go a bit glorious, a bit moody on his CV. There was quite a lot on there, but it has prompted just an incredible amount of... Shane in Chelmsford says, I worked with a lad who was hugely overweight, who claimed he was a professional cyclist. When questioned on it, he said he was out injured at the moment, so he put on a bit of weight. He also claimed to be a DJ in Ibiza at the weekends. There's a... We had the guy... Where was the one earlier? This was from... This came in yesterday. Diane says, I once worked with a bloke in local government whose stories got more unbelievable. Apparently he was mates with Jerry Springer and used to pop over there to see him in Chicago at the weekends. His daughter was a doctor and his best mate worked in intelligence at the Pentagon. I mean, these are big lies. One day we asked, how's your daughter? And he casually replied, oh, she died. It was delivered with such boredom, it felt like he'd grown tired of that particular storyline. Another time he claimed he caught a hepatitis from a Chinese restaurant but couldn't report it because the triads warned him not to contact the Environmental Health Department. Every workplace has one, says Diane. They are all over the place. They're not just like a little lie about sort of exaggerating your previous job title. They're massive. Let's speak now to a man who claims to be Thomas Godfrey and says he works at The Sun. I've never seen any evidence of this, to be honest, because I see you here in the studio sometimes. We've never checked your pass. We've never seen you go down to the other floor in this building. I saw you the other day
I've got
at
a
London.
mug from the coffee machine downstairs. I think that proves that...
We've got those mugs up here.
Lack of press card or staff card or anything else.
So no press card.
The mug is the way.
And I saw him the other morning at London Bridge Station at about 10:30. In the morning.
Leaving as well.
Leaving. I was coming into work. He was... I don't know what he was doing.
It's all very suspicious.
Who are you, Thomas Godfrey?
I don't think I've got the same catalogue of lies as Jason Arday, but...
Jason's they're a cut above the rest, aren't they? They're absolutely beautiful. I mean, they are poetic. It's
almost artistic, isn't it? I am actually waiting for him to be revealed as some sort of performance art installation, which would be the best ending to all of this, is if he turns around and says, actually, this was a 10-year modern art project to prove... that the sort of right-on liberals, dons that run Cambridge would go down the exact pathway I thought they would when I gave them these fantastical stories.
He would become a hero to us.
He would become a hero.
We'd go, brilliant work, Jason.
He'd objectively be one of the best performance artists in the world.
You're absolutely right. And I keep saying, Thomas, well, he's obviously, like, at the root of it, he's a clever bloke, you know, regardless of whatever. But now I'm getting people saying, well, I'm not so sure he is. I mean, so how far does it go back? I mean, was he ever... anything?
You have to be a good talker, you have to be charismatic, you have to sort of know your subject matter, and also the most important part of running all of these stories throughout your life is that you have to remember all of them.
That's
you
the
have
funny
to remember.
thing, but
you have to keep up with all the lies. You have to update all the lies.
Well, he claimed he ran 30 marathons in 35 days.
With a broken leg.
Yeah. Even, I don't know whether Mo Farah can even do that. Raised 5.5 million quid for charity, which he was part of a group of over 100 that raised.
Can't name anyone else, though.
Claimed he had a professional sports career as well. I mean, the
on
list...
the snooker circuit at 10.
Was he on the snooker circuit?
Apparently, yes. Snooker and football.
Snooker as well.
Snooker and football. It's an eclectic mix of sports. Normally those two don't go together, do they?
Yeah, I never saw Stephen Hendry kick a ball in my life. So maintained he was completely unable to read or write until the age of 18.
Couldn't speak till 11. Yeah, I mean, it's just as fantastical, isn't it? The whole thing. I read a big list yesterday of basically every sort of tall tale he told, and it really did stretch on. I was scrolling for a long, long time on my phone. And even though he's resigned, I think the real questions now have to be asked of the people who elevated him, seemingly without the proper scrutiny, to such a respected and high position at Cambridge. What were they thinking?
Can we play this clip again, please? You've probably seen this clip of his boss at Cambridge. I mean, it is... that word cringe, it's beyond cringe. Let's have a little... This was from a BBC documentary. I mean, this is how lauded this guy was. They made a documentary on him. And here he is meeting his new boss.
And now Jason is days away from achieving another ambition.
Hey, so good to see you.
Here's his new boss at Cambridge.
We do have a lot of work to do, but I feel really optimistic.
There will be those that think this is a tokenistic appointment. What are your thoughts on this?
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you. You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
She looks like someone who's just won a meet and greet to see Harry Styles, doesn't she? I mean, she's absolutely fawning. You are the best in the world.
I mean, there are a couple of serious points that bounce off this. One, of course, is that the Times higher education journalist Jack Grove was investigated for 4 months by the Metropolitan Police.
Right, now you might...
For asking questions.
You probably have the same view as me as this from a journalistic point of view. That's what I feel really angry about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's a great journalist as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't go out there and say, I need to try and nab a black man doing really well for himself. I mean, the idea that that was any part of the motivation was nonsense.
And if you're going to sort of go after someone in that way, I mean, setting your sights on a Cambridge professor...
Yes.
I mean, you have to have rock-solid evidence. You have to really have a suspicion that something's gone wrong there. And the second part of this, the story in some of the newspapers today, with talking to some of our day's students, people who were taught by him. He was left in charge of scholars, paying their tuition fees, and, of course, at one of the best universities in the world.
Yes.
Some of them say they got very little supervision. They weren't really looked after. And one of them, incredibly, when they asked if they could change supervisor for one of their essay projects, they were actually told that they may be accused of racism as a result, which is staggering, absolutely staggering. Those students, absolutely right. If they felt they weren't getting the best guidance from their professor, absolutely right to ask for a change, and eventually got it, but only after being told that they could be accused of racism, which is just unbelievable.
And then here was this Mr. Ade fella, you saw it with his boss there. You and I, you work for The Sun, I work for Talk, we work for the same company, we have some of our bosses are the same people. These are all very experienced people at the highest end of journalism.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a boss speak to you as glowingly and gushingly as that?
I
would be
get quite
embarrassed.
suspicious, I think. I'd realise there's a but coming.
Yeah.
And then start dreading what was coming after that. If someone started saying I was brilliant, wonderful, the best in the world at what I do, I get very suspicious of what's coming next.
It is really, yes, absolutely. And I come out the studio, my main boss, I see here, and he goes, "Yeah, good show this morning, mate," and that's it, and off you go. If I see the big boss in the lift, and every now and again we see her, she goes, "Morning, Ian." I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That's fine. As long as she says hello to me, I'm all right with that. I don't need any compliments. I don't want any of that thing. And if any of those people suddenly started going, "Oh my God, you're brilliant. You're the best in the world." I mean, obviously I am, but if I was told that by my boss...
you think something had got into their coffee or something
Something had gone terribly wrong.
It's quite weird if that was happening,
What's brilliant about this conversation, Thomas, is that that's not what you're here to talk about.
No, I know.
That's what I love about this. We just drift into all sorts of areas. Tell us about these protests. So this was in Norfolk.
Yeah, Thetford, yes.
It wasn't just last night, it's gone on for a couple of nights.
It's gone on for a couple of nights.
Tell us what it's all about and what's been happening.
Well, what's happened is the local councillors from the Reform Party believe that migrants being housed in some sort of fairly nice houses in Thetford, pretty working-class area, and they believe that asylum seekers had effectively been moved into some of these houses, obviously paid for by taxpayers. Now, 3 houses on one street have been bought in recent months by the same landlord. The local councillors said that migrants had been moved in. There has been 3 days of disruption now. On Tuesday, the police were forced to escort people believed to be asylum seekers from their homes. As you can see from some of the video going out now, that some of those protests have turned violent. We know a 68-year-old man has been charged with bringing a baseball bat to the scene of the protests. Police officer quite badly injured was bitten, allegedly by a protester. A horrible injury. You have to go to hospital for that. And so some pretty nasty scenes actually breaking out off the back of these protests against asylum housing in Norfolk.
Do we know what the reality is of who was housed there? I mean, is it that, I was reading stories that there are some apparently an old lady living on her own and feels rather vulnerable. Suddenly next door a load of people move in, a load of young guys.
Yeah, well, the Home Office won't comment on individual cases and individual housing. We know, obviously,
I love that phrase, don't they? We don't comment on individual. That gets people off so many hooks in so many different stories.
It does, and it's also not a complete denial, of course. And we do know that the police were seen escorting people from the house. Whether they were asylum seekers, as the Reform councillors claim, we don't know for certain.
Sure.
But obviously there's enough there for people in the area to go out and protest as they have.
Sure.
And then, of course, horrifyingly and sadly, these protests have turned violent and police officers have ended up being injured.
Yeah, indeed. Is it over now? Is there any way to establish whether or not the police have been able to take control and there won't be a repeat of this? Well, even if, we always make the point, even if you feel very strongly about asylum seekers and, in these circumstances, I think everybody understands how troublesome, problematic these housing arrangements can be for locals. That's slightly understating things there, but we all get it. Simultaneously, we don't want anybody, we don't want people breaking into houses and beating people up.
No, you can't attack police officers, you can't throw rocks at the police, which happened. I mean, biting a police officer, why would you do that?
Well,
what does
bites?
That achieve?
What adult bites?
But also, what does it achieve? It just makes you and your cause look ridiculous. So, I think in Thetford, for the short term, this seems to have died down slightly.
Yeah.
I think it's all sort of hit a culmination last night with arrests and charges. It's not over in the wider area, though, of course. This is 3 miles north of Barnham in Suffolk, where the Home Office has earmarked former RAF base to house 1,200 male asylum seekers. Residents of that town have been protesting for quite some time now, for a couple of months, and they say that they are incredibly worried about the impact that will have on the area, that will have on house prices, and also they say that people there would feel unsafe with the population of the town effectively doubling. It's only a very small village, really. It's not a town, it's a tiny village.
Yes.
And to put 1,200 people in who are asylum seekers...
who thought that was OK?
Have never lived here. I mean, the government say the reason for doing it is it cuts costs. It's cheaper than using HMOs. It's cheaper than using hotels, which nobody likes. But ultimately, of course, using these former RAF bases, the thing with RAF bases tend to be in fairly remote areas if you're taking off planes and landing them.
Correct.
And when they've stopped being used, the areas around it are tiny villages, and they feel they have their character damaged by schemes 100%. Like this.
On that point, Thomas, good to see you again. Thomas Godfrey from The Sun with us here on Talk. Read everything that he's written on this and multiple other stories over the course of any given week too. We take a brief pause. We're back with more in a couple of moments. 25 to 10, this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Steve is in Andalusia. Good morning, Steve, who says, Ian, we live in a small estate, so see your neighbours regularly. We have one neighbour we call Agent 3.5. He's of small stature, but claims he's ex-CIA and MI6. He was also a jockey, apparently, for one of the Saudi princes, whose private jet he had access to at the weekends. He was so worried about other princes were going to kidnap him. He had his own security protection and regularly carried his own... What's that? Well, essentially, a water mitty pistol. Great show. Have a great weekend. I mean, it's so grand, isn't it? The lies are so big in these areas, but that's the way it works. Thank you to Marie for your lovely comments as well. Marie's in Maidstone. He says, in relation to fantastical stories, I'm sitting here almost waiting for someone to call in and say, I went to school with a girl who told everyone her great-great-grandfather was a Cherokee Indian chief. That girl would be me. My dad used to tell me this all the time. Why wouldn't I believe him? I remember telling Mrs. Taylor, my teacher, all my friends, that my great-great-great-grandfather was a Cherokee Indian chief. Many years later, when I told my dad that I'd almost everyone I came into contact with, and even standing up in class and telling my teacher, he laughed so much. He's 90 in a few weeks and has dementia and Alzheimer's, but he remembers his prank and still has a wicked chuckle over it. I mean, it's beautiful in a way, isn't it? Because the innocence and the wonderful nature of kids and the way Marie would have enjoyed that story for so much of her life. It's a great story, yeah. We've done the family tree and the lineage shows up. You know, forget who do you think you are. We know who you are. You're the great-great-great-granddaughter of a Cherokee Indian chief. You'd run with that for a bit. I'd run with that. Every day of the week. Turned out not to be quite true, or not true at all. That's Maidstone for you. Marie, thank you very much indeed for that. A lot of stories we're discussing here. Let's get a voice note as well on the Tories and immigration. Can the Tories really reclaim this territory? Here's one from Jim. Morning, Jim.
Good morning, Ian. It's Jim from North London here. Yeah, I like the Kemi. She's Miss Badenoch is doing remarkably well, but like some of your other callers, I can't, especially for the next term, incoming term. I can't forgive them for what they did. It's almost like it was a self-inflicted punishment, and they wanted to get themselves out of power completely, because there's no other reason they would be that stupid and throw it away like they did, and just not listen to people and think, oh, we've got this in the bag. So no, I can't forgive them for that, and I won't forgive them.
Jim, thank you. I think Jim speaks for, I mean, I don't know how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of previous Conservative voters. It would have been interesting to see if, do you know the Rwanda scheme? I honestly believe, by the way, notionally, it was kind of Australian-esque in its theory, but it was never going to quite work like that. It wasn't as if you came over on a boat on the Channel and then was taken to Gatwick and put on a plane to Rwanda. That wasn't going to happen. They were kind of starting in a completely different direction to that. And I think Rishi Sunak thought, if we start this Rwanda scheme, and for the first few months we have 17 people on a flight, and then the next week there's 6 people, following week there's 20, then there's 1. That was almost worse than no planes taking off at all. At least with no planes taking off, Sunak could have gone, well, the lawyers have stood in the way, I'm giving it a go. But for planes to take off, what people were looking at, and Suella Braverman talked about this, didn't she, in a press conference, about plane loads of people who shouldn't be here being taken to Rwanda. I don't think that was ever going to happen, certainly not instantly. And I think Sunak thought that would be a far worse look to have a handful of people going than none at all. Let's talk to Liam Deacon, communication consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. Morning to you, Liam.
Good morning, Ian. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, on that point, we'll come on to what the Tories are saying right now and various other elements to this story. But I genuinely sense that was the fear of Sunak, and maybe that's why he called a slightly earlier election, that if if that Rwanda scheme and all that it cost was going to work, it had to work properly. I sense that he'd have spent those next months watching 72 people in total take off for Rwanda, which would have been a terrible look.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it was hundreds of millions of pounds they'd spent even getting it to the stage it was at. And I looking back at the Rwanda scheme now, I find it utterly bizarre because they were dealing with a sort of symptom of the problem rather than the problem itself.
Yeah.
You know, if you're admitting that our immigration system and the way that we're allowed to deal with illegal immigration within the confounds of the ECHR and other international treaties that we've signed are so restrictive that the only thing you can do is construct this super complex, almost performatively cruel scheme where you're flying people off to Africa. You know, that's the only deterrent you can construct, but you can't just tweak the actual rules here at home to make it less generous. You're completely missing the point. People just wanted to change the rules around the ECHR. They just wanted a fairer system here at home. They wanted us to just stop the arrivals coming from France, and it was just a distraction. And it was so bizarre and expensive, and as I say, performatively cruel. I actually think it would be kinder to have an honest discussion with people when they land in the UK and say, sorry, you'll never get recourse to public funds. You'll never be able to work in the UK. You've broken our laws and you've come here illegally. Yeah. Okay, we'll detain you here, and then we'll negotiate your leave after that. But threatening them with this bizarre thing, we were going to ship you off to Africa, is just performatively cruel and bizarre. And it's so symptomatic of the Tories, where I spoke to a couple of Tories where they said, we recognise that the ECHR is functioning as it is now. It isn't right. So what we'll do is we'll draft some guidelines where we can ignore it. And it's like, if you're going to ignore it, just change the law. Just leave that convention. Like, just grasp the nettle.
Yeah, it was a bit like when the Tories said we can cherry pick the bits of Brexit that we like, and we can say, well, we'll have this bit, but we'll have no freedom of movement. I mean, these are non-starters, aren't they? Because the organisations involved, whether it's ECHR, in this case, the European Union, the might of Brussels, the French and the Germans in particular, they were never going to let anyone cherry pick which bits they wanted.
Yeah, and it cuts to the problem, I think, that was raised in the voice note that you just played before I came on air, that people really struggle to trust the Tories when they say these things. And the question there is, do the individual members of the Conservative administration now believe what they're saying? Are they really committed to doing these things? I think a lot of them are. But the problem is that they've been so embedded with the establishment for decades now. You know, they're so embedded with members of the civil service and all the campaigning charities and stuff. They've been working alongside them for years, that they struggle to think outside the box. They struggle to actually think that we could fundamentally just change the rules of the system. We could just do things. We could just make things fairer. And that's really the problem. And it cuts to the question is, do you need some outsiders? There's a man called Nigel Farage with a band of outsiders now who have a different perspective and will come into government with fresh eyes and actually knock some heads together and change some things. And I think that is the fundamental difference.
Well, I mean, at least Keir Starmer, he had that little moment, didn't he, when he started to sort of take on some narratives of reform. And he talked about the island of strangers and this kind of stuff. And very soon afterwards, they dropped all of that because they thought, well, we can't take on reform. It's a ridiculous thing. No one's ever going to believe this. So they left it alone. And I think the Tories, not in quite the same position, but because I don't dispute there's lots of Tories, and I don't dispute Kemi Badenoch herself feels very strongly about this. She wasn't even an MP until 2017. So not everything in the history of the Tory party is down to her. So, yes, she might have changed, and many people within it might have changed, but this idea of trying to not just emulate, but almost usurp reform on a fundamental issue like immigration is simply not going to happen, right?
It's impossible to say what the Tories or reform would do when they get into next government, but as a voter, as a, you know, you're basically figuring out who you trust. You know, what is the probability that one will really shake things up? And the obvious answer, for me at least, is reform. The other big example is when Keir Starmer started talking in really hard-nosed terms about the civil service and how unproductive they were and wasteful. And sometimes ideological, and a lot of that was to do with his advisors were telling him to say that. And then you actually had former Tory MPs. I remember Greg Smith piped up out of nowhere saying, "Leave the civil service alone." So there does actually seem to be a cross-party consensus that there is problems in the civil service and that the immigration system, as it is fundamentally unfair right now. And the voters basically have a choice about who they trust to correct that. And they can make that assessment for themselves.
Yes, and I think people clearly at the moment, looking at all the polling, they are making that assessment. And, you know, even when reform take a slight dip in a poll, it's not ever because the Tories have taken a rise in a poll. And that, I don't think I've seen that happen. They're doing slightly better than they were. But there's no fundamental seismic shift in an appetite for the Conservatives, it seems.
No, the next general election is going to be really hard fought. Yeah. I think that Reform will win at least 100 seats, and I really hope they win a majority. But it's good, you know, the mathematics of it are really difficult with the Conservatives picking up a little bit of support now. But I'm not a pollster. So this announcement by the Conservatives that they're going to evict people from social housing is really fascinating, because I remember a year or two ago when people on Twitter and X started pointing out that really eye-watering numbers, particularly in London, of social housing that were occupied by foreign nationals, and it was completely dismissed as sort of bigoted and something you couldn't say. And it's just another example of how things that were said a few months ago and were dismissed suddenly catch, and then all the major parties start talking about it. And you have to wonder, at what point do you just start looking at the people that have said it first, you know? Yeah. So, but no, let's go to this story quickly, because one of the things that I was reading the coverage of it this morning, and the big line from the people that are pushing back against this policy, they say, hang on a minute, it's only 10% of social households have a non-UK lead tenant, right? That's 10%. And they say it's not a big deal. If you drill down into the figures a little bit more, which I was doing this morning, okay, when you actually ask, in London, it's 47% have a lead non-UK national. But then if you look across England, if you ask the question, not just a non-UK resident, but you actually say households that reference a person born outside of the UK. So that's a household that has one or two non-UK nationals. It's 47.6% of people nationally in England. Okay, that, let me just say, includes dual nationals, people with indefinite leave to remain, refugees, Irish citizens, and foreign-born nationals. So some of those people within that 47%, I think British people would say, yeah, we don't reasonably think they should be kicked out. But what you cannot deny, and what people are seeking to claim this morning, is this is a small issue. It is not a small issue. Okay, it is whether or not you think it's half or you think it's 10%. That is a significant number of social housing in this UK at a period of acute housing shortage. And it's figures like this that demonstrate why this is now becoming a cross-party issue. You cannot ignore it. People are desperate for homes, and a significant percentage of them are taken out of people that haven't paid into the pot. And that leads me to the second, more philosophical issue about this. When you have a period of unprecedentedly high immigration, you have to start talking about the social contract. Yeah. So people pay their taxes. We all pay into one big pot because we trust that the government is going to do something with that money for our community, be that our national community, our local community, or our family. We pay those taxes in because we think we are part of whatever we're paying into. But when you reach a point where a large percentage of the people within that wider philosophical group of the national community, we don't think they are playing fair within that social contract, people start getting nervous. They start to think it's unfair. And when they see statistics like 47% of social housing in England has a person referenced as a non-UK national, they start to think this isn't fair. I don't want to pay my taxes. I don't want to support a system of social housing where I'm not part of that group. I'm not benefiting from that. And where we draw that line is really complicated. Okay, we might say it's just the lead tenant. We might say it's just one person on that. But actually, I think, the majority of these people, because actually people on working visas can't get council houses because they have non-recourse to public funds. So if you're an Australian that arrives here on a working visa, you can't get a household. No. So all of those foreign nationals have indefinite leave to remain. So this cuts to the core problem here, that anybody that comes to the UK and works for 5 years, it doesn't matter if they pay very little tax. It doesn't matter if they claim in-work benefits during that period. You're here for 5 years and then you automatically get indefinite leave to remain. And once you get indefinite leave to remain, you're on a fast track within a few years to get citizenship. And I just don't think that should be the case anymore, because that system of indefinite leave to remain was conceived after the Second World War, when people were coming in small numbers, but we desperately needed them to do skilled jobs. Okay, now we're importing hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people a year to do low skilled jobs, okay, which people didn't agree to. And it is just simply not true that all of those people, it's not obvious to me, should automatically be on a track to get citizenship. Many, many countries on earth don't do this. They welcome skilled foreign workers to do jobs for a set period of time, but they don't make the automatic assumption that you should be able to stay forever, bring your nan, bring your children, claim a pension and stay forever. And that's what this cuts to. If we reformed that and these people weren't getting indefinite leave to remain within 5 years, we wouldn't even be having this discussion about social housing and about 50% of all social housing, because it wouldn't happen, because they wouldn't get those rights.
Indeed. Listen, Liam, I've got to step in just because of time. That's such a brilliant answer and argument that you put forward. I think it's an unarguable point you've made, and it's great to see you as ever with some really interesting, it's not just a take, it's just a great description of where we are currently at. That's Liam Deacon, communication consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. Boy, he was good. Alex Phillips on the way shortly. Let's get a voice note back to that slightly lighter issue of the water mitties that live among us. This one comes from Eddie. Morning, Eddie.
Oh, it's Eddie from Salisbury. Here's a quick story about my oldest brother. We were once out in the wine bar in Bicester years and years ago, and to impress some women, he said he was a doctor, but that didn't work anyway, so we carried on with the night. But someone actually did pass out, and they were looking for a doctor, and these women remembered that. And they said, oh, this guy over here, he's a doctor. And my brother walks over to them. They go, you're a doctor, yeah? He said, yeah, I am a doctor, but a doctor of philosophy. And we basically had to leave the wine bar and go home.
That's brilliant. Was he really a doctor of philosophy, or was that his get out from the medical emergency? Love it. Eddie, thank you very much indeed for that. One here that's anonymous says, I work with a fella who tells whoppers on a daily basis. A picture of his new girlfriend turned out to be a former Miss UK, former head of security at the Houses of Parliament. He said he was a martial arts expert until I told him I was a black belt myself. And this is anonymous because I still work with him, says this anonymous texter. We won't go any further. And one here, I once worked with a lady in Shrewsbury who suddenly had a close relative die on her the week of the annual stock take, which is a busy time, of course. Had to take time off, I'd imagine. After a few years, the company questioned her about this after we realised that her mother had died twice in 4 years. And we there's a few of those. And discovered it was all fabrication. People love a whopper, don't they? Lots to get through. Don't go away, Bob in Kent. We'll try to get you shortly. We've got Alex Phillips on the way. We'll chat to her before the news right here at the home of common sense. This is Talk.
what's this about you approving of Andy Burnham going on a holiday?
Yes, I do. I've written an article for the iNewspaper. I think you're wrong. I think Carl Turner's wrong.
Why?
Why? Because people need holidays and we want politicians
15 days? 15 days. What nonsense are you writing in the iPaper?
Do you want to take it?
What is he, an oil rig worker? 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? You don't think he'll come to regret this holiday? Let me tell you, he will.
I'd rather take it now than in October, and I want our politicians to be like normal people taking a holiday in the summer, but we'll get into all of that.
That's absolute rubbish.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's the last one of the week for us, but I am back next week for a whole week filling in for Jeremy Kyle. It is that time of day, which means that Alex Phillips has darkened our doorstep to give us a list of the savoury delights that are on offer in the buffet that is 10 till 1. There you go. It's a bit poetic, wasn't it?
There's a lot of metaphors.
Wasn't quite Jason Arday level.
I love Jason Arday. He is my person of 2026. I just love him.
Thomas Godfrey from The Sun earlier said to us, wouldn't it be amazing if it turned out he was actually a performative artist and he'd done all of this as part of a thesis and a PhD and it was all designed.
Testing reactions.
Then he would become a hero,
Ta-da,
wouldn't
I'm
he?
actually right-winging against DEI.
They actually fell for the marathon story. That would be amazing. We'd love it.
Actually see, because he's got this memoir coming out, doesn't he?